I just turned the privacy off. Is that picking up?
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Hey!
So,
Third time's a charm.
third time's the charm. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Westford Conservation Commission for Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. This meeting is now being recorded by Westford Cable Access TV for playback online. By attending this meeting, you're consenting to your audio and likeness being included in the recording. So the first item on the agenda at 7 p.m. is open forum. Do any members of the commission have something for open forum? Matt?
I'd just like to highlight an event that is being held by the Westford Conservation Trust on April 16th at 7 p.m. It's a seminar identifying and managing invasive plants for homeowners and landowners. There's a QR code or the registration link is active, and I think if people are interested, I can certainly, it's in the meeting packet, but also they can reach out to me and we can share this brochure. Looks to be a good one.
Yeah, and the Westford Conservation Trust on their website also has a link for registering. So that gives people another venue. Okay, so moving on to our next 7 p.m. agenda item. There was going to be a public hearing for the Westford Department of Public Works for the Plain Road Sidewalk Project, Phase 2. If anybody's here for that, there were issues with notification of abutters, so the public hearing will not be open tonight. It will be opened at our next meeting, April 23rd. So if anybody's here for that, please come back in 2 weeks. So moving on to our next 7 p.m. agenda item, it's a minor modification request for noise 6 and 8 Callista Terrace.
All right. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. So I'm here tonight to provide a brief update to our project and request minor revisions to our plans within the 100-foot wetland buffer that's in scope for our project. So I'll begin just by setting context. I'll start with the grading revisions. Please note that these are not surveyor actual, but close approximates as measured with a grading tool used by our contractor for determining grades for building walls. Any exact measurements required by the Commission will need to be provided as part of the upcoming as-built by Hancock Associates, who we've been working closely all along with this project. So from a grading perspective, this augments our latest notice of intent document, which was submitted to the Commission on September 11th, 2023. The illustration depicts the notable revisions to that plan due to adjustments made in the field during construction. The resulting anticipated grade adjustments and improvements and transitions with neighboring properties. So of that, I'd like to call out just a few key things.
There's a laser pointer under your map that you can use if you want to. So.
Thank you. I'll call it the first one. Has no real material impact on the grades, but we did make a revision to the small wall up here. So no material impact pertaining to the grades that we're going to talk about. The next item I'd like to call out are the rock and boulder walls, retainments on both sides of the large wall. So just to refresh, this is the large wall running around the back of the property, retaining for the backyard there. So there was basically retainment made on the left-hand side, and the right-hand side, two small ones on the right-hand side. I'll start on the right-hand side. These are very small retainment. Basically, they extend into the existing walls on the abutting property, which is 8 Callista Terrace. So we've been working with them on this as well. So it's just a natural extension of what they already had. So it just kind of comes straight across onto the property. This has improved the degree of slope. So we've had a 6-to-1. The original plans from Hancock at a 6-to-1 grade. We've preserved that. That has not changed. What did improve with this retainment was from a 3-to-1 to a 4-to-1 slope running back here within the wetlands. So we're able to achieve improvement in terms of the slope on that side. On the left-hand side, I know Hancock originally wrote this was a 3-to-1 all the way down. I have trouble believing that because we have a larger retainment here with boulders, and we were able just to maintain the 3-to-1 off the back side of that boulder, of the boulder retainment. So I would argue this retainment here was a major or even a necessity to maintain a 3-to-1 grade on that side. We did increase the size of the drainage swell, so that's running here in the middle. So we increased it by 50 feet, so I think it went from 100 to 150 feet. It also increased to 4 feet wide, so we have a much bigger drainage swale now coming off the back of the wall to catch all that water. And the contractor team has done a really good job making these grades kind of so that they fall nicely into the swale at the appropriate locations. And then off this side, the last thing I'd like to call out is an addition of erosion and water runoff mitigation for abutting 25 Stony Brook, so right behind us. So this is their driveway kind of running out right here. It goes, their garage is up here and it kind of comes around, their driveway goes out this way. So this allows, as you can imagine, we didn't really touch anything over here, but once you see kind of this slope coming down, we felt compelled to improve the situation over there, so we went above and beyond and actually created a small retainment wall with all crushed stone, 3/4 crushed stone, free draining material back there to really just make sure that we're not creating problems for our neighbors. So that's really kind of like the starting point. Any questions here in terms of these kind of key differences from the original NOI?
So all these are done already?
Yep. Yes, sir.
This is after the fact, just showing us then.
So,
Yeah, we're getting close to as-built. This isn't too far. It does not deviate so far from the original plan. I did include that. I don't know if you want to try to flip them back and forth. I do have the original.
Oh, I didn't include it in the meeting packet because I was afraid we were going to get too many plans. You have the confusion.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the original plan showed 3-to-1 slopes in most places. So the improvement to 4-to-1, in my opinion, is certainly an improvement of, the slowing down the velocity of any precipitation towards the wetland resource area, kind of to the top right of the plan. And when I was recently out within the last 2 weeks, the site is stable, and I think they're getting to establishing kind of permanent ground cover, which I know is kind of another, the next piece of
I do have a printout of the original or the last NOI if anybody's interested. I know that's not as easy to display.
So what is the ground cover on this 4-to-1 slopes?
So they're proposing,
Yeah.
certainly, they're proposing, it was originally proposed as the erosion control seed mix, so which is just natural grasses, in kind of, not to steal their, I can get it on.
Yeah, we talked.
It reached out because the original planting plan was aggressive, and certainly the cost of all the plantings. They wanted to scale back a little bit, and particularly, with some of the plantings within the buffer. So included was the original landscape architect's plan. The homeowners kind of provided a hand-drawn, scaled back one. And then this afternoon, it got documented, the adjustment from the original planting plan was provided. And so within the wetland resource, the buffer to the wetland resource, it's a reduction of 2 winterberries, 2 arrowwoods, and 6 blueberries. My thought.
Sorry, I would add note, one of those arrowwoods is really right on the cusp. There's not as much room, like our landscape architect was very ambitious in what he thought we could fit back there, and we actually kind of walked it out several weeks ago. I think there is one arrowwood that would be right on the cusp of the 100-foot buffer, so you may get only a -1 there. So sorry, Matt.
Yeah, but in evaluating the existing conditions, and as they are getting to permanent stabilization, my thought was to improve the seed mix to, as opposed to just the native grasses, to both the conservation and wildlife mix, which has forbs and wildflowers, and in addition to the roadside matrix, which will introduce kind of the more shrubby seeds again, especially where kind of the rear of the property isn't, going to be maintained, this, it's really, the plantings are to be established and then kind of, left to naturalize, particularly within the 100-foot buffer. I thought the combination of those two seed mixes would enhance and certainly diversify the plant community within the buffer beyond just, the native grasses.
Now, were these are native plantings, are these also likely to propagate over time?
I think sun would. I'm not 100% sure on
Okay.
kind of what the.
So if they
what's-
like where they are, they might replicate?
Yes.
Okay. Members of the commission have any questions about the changes in planting plan? Do any members of the audience have any comments or questions about this? Okay. So in terms of this is a minor modification request.
Seems appropriate.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the minor modification request? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time this evening. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, moving on to our 7:05 PM agenda item. It's Juniper Hill Parcel B, a request for tree removal.
Don't see the homeowner here who requested, and I didn't have a phone number for them, so I sent them an email this afternoon. I'm not sure if they received it. And so, this is the first house on the left entering Juniper Hill. The abutting property to the left, so looking at a photo that I took today, the property owner's house is on the right. There is a stone wall, certainly, stone wall present that delineates the property boundary. They came in requesting permission to remove true trees. The first tree in the foreground, I think it's a maple here, you can see the trunk here, is on the property owner's side of the stone wall. And so, in my opinion, that's their property, there aren't any jurisdictional wetland resource areas present, it's just two property owners. In the background, probably another 30 feet or so beyond, kind of in the shadows, if I can zoom in, is another, I think, maple that is on the commission's property's side of the stone wall, but does overhang, and its canopy does go overhangs the property of 2 Juniper. I wasn't able to determine the status of the tree's health. Again, they're concerned about trees and branches, and just to the left of where this photo was taken, included in the commission's last packet, was a couple pines blew down in the windstorms a month ago or so. And so they were concerned about, kind of the trees and the proximity to the house.
Just trimmed.
I don't know. I don't know. So, and I don't know if they've spoken with a tree company. Typically property, with trees overhanging property lines, it's kind of the verticality of the property line extends up. So if they want to prune, or trim the tree to the property line, that, I think it would be, it's within their property. Anything further than that, we would certainly need to hire an arborist to assess, to have a professional out to assess the tree. Again, it is a hardwood, but, you know, it's sandy soils in that area, and I wouldn't, I would defer to a professional arborist kind of opinion on what.
Yeah, I would hate to have to take it unless we really needed to, because it is a hardwood. And
Mhm.
at least from what I'm seeing right here, while it may be a portion of it like crossing over the line, I don't see it like hanging over the house.
Right, it
Or
certainly,
anything that's going to.
it's certainly not
permanently
as
cause damage.
tropic
Yeah.
growing, you know, growing sideways. It certainly does appear to have kind of a full crown. So in lieu of, and again, I don't know if the property owner will be showing up later again, as I amended, the agenda got amended during the day. I can certainly kind of convey the, you know, trimming to the property line, and, you know, if that's not sufficient, and they, you know, may hire an arborist to, you know, fully assess the tree.
So they didn't provide any pictures?
They provided a whole slew of pictures that didn't come through in my
Okay.
email. I don't think the trees look like that. So,
Okay. So that's what that was intended.
yeah, those were all the photos that did not get
Okay.
come through. And so I ran out today to take a photo so we could have at least
Something to discuss.
something to discuss.
Okay.
And so, again, I don't know if I can certainly take the commission's just, you know, based off of the commission's discussion, I can, you know, progress with that. And, you know, in the event we need to have an arborist and, you know, the tree needs to be fully removed, we can,
But make
bring
them
this-
aware what they can do without
without, you know,
permission.
yes,
What they can do that doesn't require the commission's approval.
yes.
Okay. Jim?
This is no wetland involvement at all, it's strictly property line.
It's property line, yep. There is a wetland, but it's further to the north, looking on the other side of kind of the emergency access road. This wasn't part of it.
Okay. Moving on to our 7:10 PM agenda item, there's a continued public hearing for 85R Acton Road.
Good evening.
Good
Peter
evening.
Bemis, Engineering Design. Where this property is already open for hearing, I did receive a document from the abutter through a representative today. It came to us this morning, but I was out most of the day. I was able to respond to that. So if I am allowed, I would submit those documents that were emailed to Matt. They all did come in late, but we didn't get that till late as well. So if that's okay with you, I'll hand these
Yeah.
off, and if you prefer me to just walk through what you've already been submitted in a timely manner, we can do that too.
I think kind of touch on where we started, kind of changes that were made, and then.
Okay. So do you want to put up the R1 41 plan or the R2 49 plan?
I think R1, in my opinion, R1, because there were
Okay.
some changes made based
Sure.
upon.
And then we
the
can touch on
commission.
whether the other changes, okay. Great, so Peter Bemis, Engineering Design Consultants, and to my right is Jim Hayes. It's Jim's property. And when we had last met, we had focused on the driveway. I'm not quite getting to the top of the sheet, Matt. I'm gonna
Sorry.
start my way at the road and work my way in. So when we had last met, there was some discussion about there having been a berm along this edge of the driveway, and our neighbor to the north here had indicated that it had been removed. When Mr. Hayes moved to the property, that berm was broken up. That asphalt berm was broken up, so he had just removed it. What we found out here, and I have some photos, and I know Matt's been out to the site as well, there's a bit of a berm that runs along this whole edge of the property, and there are trees lining it. When I had met with you that evening, I had suggested possibly this would be a great spot for another one of these filter strips along the edge of the road. In order for us to build that, however, we would likely damage the roots of the trees. So that made no sense to me when I was out at the site, when I was with Jim, and I just said, look, you can either just put the berm back, and that's what this plan shows, and then what we found was at the spill-off point, there was some riprap there, but not to a very great extent, and there was mostly leaf matter there, to be honest. There are no trees that would have to be cut, so the plan then reflected the fact that we should put in this filter strip back here, which is what, again, I would have thought was anticipated on that plan when they approved this. So we're basically just trying to put back what was already there. In talking to Matt a bit after the fact with this, again, this is working on its own. There really doesn't have to be anything here. And that would be certainly up to the commission to make the final decision. There's no evidence of erosion. This area is all basically sand and gravels with the underlying soil conditions. And the water is definitely making its way out here without scour or any problem. So I would leave it to your better judgment of whether you want to make concentrated flow, because that's what's going to happen if you don't allow the water just to bleed off the edge of the driveway as it comes down the driveway, because the pitch is in this direction. By keeping the berm here, it's going to be concentrated flow. So then it's going to come all the way up and spill off as a higher rate of flow and higher volume. So then you need something like this. So that was the first thing. If we could just paint.
And I have a photo kind of showing the area of, the area on the right here is the approximate location of where the stone trench would go if one was installed and maintained is currently. And looking back up the driveway towards Acton Road, there is, it appears that when the driveway was constructed, it appears it was cut into the existing grade. So there is a naturally occurring berm on that north side of the driveway presently, actually, and does exist as well, kind of on the south side in this general location, and then also here as continuing on through here, and there is a low point that is generally located in the location of this this dip in the driveway and natural existing contours. So a thought I had, and certainly would appreciate the commission's consideration, would be if that was, if kind of the natural existing berms along both sides, if that could be established, or could a natural an earthen berm be established in that location, which may prevent.
So basically, it cost to extend what's farther up the driveway, have that kind of build up a berm so that there's a continued directing of the water into the pavement?
Yes, and so it's not, and so then this
So it
doesn't
come off
become
onto the
low point,
Okay.
it's continues, any of the driveway runoff. And again, something for the commission to consider, we can, I don't wanna,
Okay,
but I have the photos.
And I would say I'd be open to that, because I don't disagree. There's definitely a natural low spot here, so there'll be a confluence point there, and then it would definitely migrate off, but we could certainly build that edge up. That's not a problem. So then, moving on to the site, the next point would be is that these markers here that are shown kind of in a purple color, if you will, these are intended to be signs to identify that there is a resource area here, and that is, they're put along the 50-foot buffer zone. So that's going to repeat right around the site. So you can see it starting on this side, and it's going to come right back around on this side. The barn, when we first started, we were 40-60, we're now 30-50. Although the dimension's not shown on here, on the Rev 2, we did identify that the closest point is 60 feet. from the resource area. This is the 50 zone here. And then when we do this, this tree line is really the drip line, so that's the edge of the crown of the tree. So there could be some trimming in through here, and that's why we put this proposed tree line on, because essentially that becomes like the new drip line, if you will. But I don't see us cutting down any trees to put this barn in. They're gonna be able to work within what I would call the lawn limits, because if there had been a larger tree right here, we would have identified that when we did the survey work. The chambers, so we had told you before, we were gonna infiltrate our stormwater on site. There's an infiltration chamber located here and here. These chambers are, and again, on the R2 plan, these are linked together. And then there's a pipe that comes across the road here to connect and discharge. And there's an outlet right here. So that's, that was on this plan. I think they were on a layer that might have been shut off if this is the R1. So I apologize for that. Layer management, sometimes when you're trying to get a drawing out, and they might have missed this one. But these two chambers are interlinked, and then they discharge here. This filter strip is no different than what you had seen before, so that's still here. We're
So-
only adding this little bit of pavement right here.
If I remember from the previous discussion, those two chambers are basically to take water below surface, and they will only feed out when there's a significant enough rainstorm that the chamber capacity is exceeded, and then it's just the excess that flows out.
That's right, yeah.
Okay, so most of it will be infiltrated deep into the ground in
Correct.
that location?
Correct. So the only thing that's essentially lost within these would be the upper 4-inch, if you will, of the chamber, because that's as high as the pipe can go. When we do the pop-offs, which is going out the top, so then the entire chamber would be submerged. But by doing the interlink here, we do lose a little bit of capacity, but it's not enough to be concerned about, I
It
think.
would only be for the larger events?
Right, we were just trying to address the abutters' concern, because if the pop-offs did go off, they were gonna be on this side of the watershed. So therefore, they would be traveling to this part of the twin culvert. But by doing this and interconnecting them, we can discharge on the northeast side, so there would never be any
So
backup.
it
Presumably,
bypasses the culvert?
right, so presumably, if you were ever having that intense storm, then these culverts are gonna be taxed as well. So that was the idea, is just get all that water to the northeast side, so that they're not part of anything that might be backed up. If we could just pan a bit to the right here. So the other item that was discussed was the fact of this area here. Historically, at some point, the prior owners entitled to this property, as I said, there could have been some trees that came down, they could have done some clearing. I don't know the circumstances. Matt had looked at some timelines on some photographs. But bottom line was that this area is not treed in its natural state like it had been. So therefore, we said, let's restore this area. So again, here are the signs that would mark out the edge. And this is about 5,680 square feet. And this would be properly seeded. And we put down some details on how to treat that area.
So Matt, he's talking about seeding. What's the rest of it, that area look like around this disturbed area?
I mean, so this is all vegetated with mature trees, pines.
And then we have an area that's cleared
Mhm.
that we're just talking about maybe throwing in some conservation mix. Shouldn't we be putting something more than that?
I mean, it's certainly, if
Because
we,
I don't want to come back and find out that somebody, even though we've got, 2 markers there indicating you really shouldn't be going beyond this point, it hasn't really been an effective deterrent in the past from stopping people from going beyond
So-
that and maintaining areas. So I'm thinking maybe something more than just
the original,
conservation seed.
the original order for the construction of the house had a split rail fence at the 50.
Okay.
And over time, 18, 20 years later, the split rail fence wasn't maintained, new property owners, and so it got removed. So, again, I think having posts with signs, with signage as to, what the intent is important, is important.
I think it is.
Right, I mean, and so, I
I
mean,
want to see
and if-
something more than just, conservation mix beyond it.
But is the conservation mix is not good, that's not gonna be a maintained area, so in fact, would the conservation mix keep that area stable till natural seedlings took over.
It's
Yeah,
not
I'm just
it's not
thinking there should be
mandatory
some
lawn.
additional plantings there, so
Okay.
people wouldn't wanna get the idea that, geez, all these other areas over here, are treed or whatever, this isn't. Maybe I can go in there and maintain that. How many times have we seen that?
Just, this is not lawn area, this is not anything, I would say there's saplings in here, and that's why we did the seed, was to basically supplement. So we're trying to create a more diversified habitat here.
All I'm saying is, having not seen it, I just wanna make sure it doesn't end up just being conservation mix that somebody comes in and mows and maintains.
Right.
And the goal here is to have it not be maintained. And we've seen instances where people maintain beyond the post.
So what I could tell you, sir, is that there is a specific mix, and we did put down a rate with which it's to be applied. And it's at the recommended rate. So I was gonna say, I know there's little blue stem, there's big blue stem, there was some trefoil,
These are new.
butterfly milkweed, black-eyed Susan, sneezeweed, asters, goldenrods, and there were some other perennial, some bent grass.
So there were plants that are really made for a transition zone, because it's not a wetland, sir, and there's quite a bit of topography there. So
No,
the idea was to-
all I'm saying is I don't wanna see it maintained, so I was looking for something more than just, a grass, whether it be a conservation mix or not, just to make sure that area does not,
What's
in the future,
soil
get
quality?
maintained.
What's the soil quality there, the topsoil quality?
Yeah, again, it would be what was put down, I don't know, I didn't take a
Okay. No, I'm
sample or
just,
anything.
from a visual, is it,
Yeah.
is what's starting to regrow there doing so well, or is it straggling?
Well, I was trying to give it a jump start on being more diversified. That's really
Okay.
where we came with this, was just to
Well, I
increase the diversity.
Okay,
And this is a mix that I think will work, and then you leave it alone, and mother's gonna heal herself and put in what will propagate well in that area, for sure. But I just think you're giving it even more time. So by putting in the seed mix, those seeds will, they're gonna supplement, and then the ones that are gonna thrive are gonna take off.
so what's there now, you said there are some maple saplings,
Yeah.
is it basically kind of bare ground between them? Or leaf litter, or,
I'd say leaf.
Yeah, I'd say it's mostly leaf, yeah.
okay.
From
It's-
when I was out.
It's definitely nothing's manicured in that area right
No,
now.
but I'm just thinking in terms of having, because we don't have a picture, we didn't do a site
Right,
visit, it's
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
trying to see in my mind's eye, where are we starting?
Right.
Okay.
I feel like we're taking the right approach to this, and again, there's a lot of woods here. So once you get past this tree line, it's all woods, for the most part here, is what you're gonna find. So this actually creates a little bit of a different habitat, so that,
So it'll grow in, it's
it's not a bad thing to have some diversity, that's all. And I think these signs are gonna be able to establish those limits. So that's, in these markers, we've identified it, they're where they are. I guess we could put another one in this zone because of what we've created. I tried to do it on a certain setback, I think it was like 60 to 80 feet, depending on what was happening, or
Make
no
more
more
sense
than
if you
that.
put them like on the corners of the.
yeah, where you change, where the line changes direction, yeah, one with a.
Sure, okay, yeah.
And yes, maybe,
So we could put one here and here instead of the
Yeah.
one in the middle.
and,
Okay.
well, but also thinking one in the middle, because that, for somebody pushing the lawnmower or riding the lawnmower, one between those two makes a lot easier to kind of keep track
Sure.
of where you're going.
Okay. Yeah, there's really not much manicuring that's gonna be going on along this edge, once this gets established. That's all I was gonna say, is that topographically, you'll see the distinction here, so.
Would those signposts, those are specific, are those specifically called out in the order, in the?
Yeah, the signage, it isn't included on the plan. They do say, the plan note, I can scroll to it actually, yeah, just so. It's number 2, protective zone shall be identified by installing 4x4 posts with appropriate signage identifying protected wetlands, so beyond the gradient. In,
Oh, condition 53?
yes, there is, the wetland resource area do not disturb.
Yeah.
The
but it's-
language for the signs,
Okay.
is pretty
But I was-
standard.
But I was also looking, because that condition is in perpetuity.
Right, we're so that,
So that, even when the certificate of completion is issued, that's one of the conditions that stays and would be found when somebody, in the future, when the homeowner's selling and somebody's going back to the registry of deeds, looking at stuff, they'll see those, the conditions that persist.
So that really represents everything that was submitted to you to be prepared for this evening in the discussion. And then, as I said, what we received was a letter from the abutters consultant today, and did my best to try to get that addressed and get the plan revised so that we could, try to be on the same page here. We're not gonna be on the same page with all items, but we were just trying to do our best to do so, to make it easier to hopefully close this matter out this evening. So I could, unfortunately, the way the consultant addressed this, they didn't put numbered items. It was more narrative form with some bullets. What I did is took the opportunity to actually number some of these, so we would be able to come back to it if we had to at a future date. So if you'll allow me, rather than just summarize their letter, I'll just summarize my points. And if we could have the plan, or I can just read the points and then go to the plan. So I'm not sure what's easier. I didn't change the driveway at all. That's just really a discussion point. They didn't bring up any points to it, so we didn't touch that at all. What was, I guess to start with the first item, was the barn itself. What was its setbacks? Matt, if you don't mind panning just a little bit.
sorry.
Yep, that's all right. So right here, these dimensions had been on the plan to all of its setbacks, but unfortunately, for layer management, they were not on that R1 plan. So the structure itself, 60 feet from the wetland, I believe it's 130 to the line there. It was existing house, they had mentioned. What was the existing? I think they said 60 or 70. It's 80 feet to its closest point. And then the pool was 64 to its closest point. So all those are marked on the plan.
So can I go back for a second and ask you a
Yes, sir.
question? On the proposed 30 by 50-foot barn,
Yes.
what's the foundation?
Yeah, I was gonna get to that. It's
Okay.
described in here, but it's gonna be a frost wall with a slab.
With a
So, yeah,
slab?
Yeah.
So my question to you is, how do you get to put a reserve SAS
Yeah. Sure,
so
I have that
close to
answer
it?
too.
Because it's like, should be
No, sir.
less than 20, I thought.
No, sir. So I'll go through that. If you let me do it in order, is that all right?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. What I was gonna say is each improvement is all the improvements that we're proposing are with a manicured lawn area. So we're basically eliminating manicured lawn. And that we believe that we are aligned with Westford Wetland Protection Bylaw and the state wetland regulations with the proposal. They had suggested that we have an alternative location for the barn. Putting this barn anywhere else on this site, in my opinion, will alter more buffer zone and would have a greater impact on the site and would require more restoration to mitigate its position. We're actually trying to platform right off of this existing driveway area here. And by doing so, we're actually setting this back a little bit further to take on this approach. So to go to other locations is just going to disturb more land.
Well, you could
And
decrease the
greater
size of
impact.
that as well and give us a greater setback. I mean, you got a 30 by 50-foot proposed barn. It's bigger than my house. You know, why couldn't it be like 20 by 50 or 20 by 60, elongate it and give us that additional buffer where right now you have it at 60, you could be approaching 70 or even 75 and get us back to our, required setback.
I can't disagree with that, sir. I mean, a smaller building would have less impact. So this is the size that the proponent, well, they wanted a larger one. We brought it down so that we would be more aligned with your local requirements.
But it doesn't necessarily mean we have to accept the size if it doesn't meet our setback
Well,
requirements.
is there something with the intended use of the barn, is there something where, I think Eric had talked about maybe reducing the width to 20 and making it longer, in terms of potentially giving you the same interior space? Given the planned uses of the barn for vehicle storage, et cetera, would that still be, would that slight
I
change to the
understand. I
dimensions?
know we were trying to optimize how they would use this, and having that width would allow him to get his vehicle in here, plus his camper, and have some storage, so that's the intended use of the space. Is there another configuration? I'm sure there would be. This is, we're trying to optimize, and this is where we're at tonight with the proposal.
This is what he wants.
Well, I think he wanted the 40 by 60, sir, but did agree that we would come down in size. So I'm not going to mean to belabor that point. We're not, so then the next point they had raised was some historic filling on the lot. So EDC is not aware of any historic filling that was being implied by the consulting engineer. But we do acknowledge that this 50-foot buffer zone in here definitely has been altered to some extent. I don't believe the grades have been changed through this area, but there's definitely been something that's happened here. And we're restoring that. So that's what we found on the site, we talked about it, we've acknowledged it. Anything else is speculation on their part. The work limits here are clearly identified. Again, we're not planning on cutting any trees. If we were, we would be identifying them with their size and their species. I will, if you could just pan a bit to the right again. So I will say that there has been some clearing by maybe the abutter or the abutter's predecessor entitled. This is the fence that's on their lot, and this is the tree line. And that's the 50-foot buffer zone right here. So whether this happened recently or whenever, that's where the tree line is. That's what's there today. Mr. Hayes didn't do this, and he has no intention of doing any work here. I just want to bring that to your attention. This is where the 100-foot buffer zone is to this. So that's well within the property. And again, this is the building position. So there was debating whether there was sufficient sedimentation erosion control procedures and methods. The plan has a great deal of those there. We've got an erosion control barrier through the site. We identify what that is. There are notes on construction procedures, sedimentation erosion control procedures. Being a single-family home, and these are improvements on the site, I don't think this rises up to the level of having to do a separate stormwater pollution prevention plan. But at the same token, there are certainly enough things on here, provisions, details, to follow to avoid having a conflict with this resource area, intermittent stream, or the wetlands that are around it. The filter strip, they were questioning this filter strip here. It is capturing water. Right now, this existing driveway has no capture. There's nothing provided at all. There's no erodible surface here. There's nothing that indicates that the stormwater is having any problems on this site. Stormwater is going through these culverts. The only thing I did note when we were out at the site with Matt was that there was a little bit of debris and some leaves behind the culvert here. Seasonally, you're going to get that. That's really the only thing. Downstream, there's no problems here at all. There's a lot of leaf matter out there, but this channel is working just fine. So long as this top end of the site is maintained, there's going to be no reason that water can't go through that culvert. And also, just for the other point here, is that this filter strip is about 30 inches above the invert to the pipe here. So not only is the stone here available to help facilitate getting the water off the surface into the ground efficiently, that there's that much more infiltrative space as well between that and the point where water is going through the culvert. So it was being questioned about the soil testing that was here. We did not do any soil testing to support the on-site stormwater management system. What we did is we relied upon the soil tests that were done for the soil absorption system that's right here. There was a test pit that was done right in the center of this reserve area trench. And that was part of Ludwig Surveying Associates plan dated 1999, April 1999, with soil testing performed by a third party. It was J. Morset, with H-Star, and it was witnessed by John Garside with the Westford Board of Health. We've worked with Mr. Garside before in other communities. He's reviewed our plans. I know Mr. Garside. I know that if he witnessed a soil test here, I can take that to the bank. That was done properly, and it was witnessed, and it wouldn't be something I would have to question.
That wasn't my question. My question
No,
was,
sir, I'm not,
what,
it's not your, it wasn't answering you, sir. If I could just finish, please. So this was the consultant was raising this point. And then the question was, what are the soils? The soils are fine to coarse sands and gravels. And what they did is they discovered groundwater at 205.8 at this position right here. Again, that's in close proximity to where our proposed area is, so I don't expect groundwater to be much different through this area. And when we checked that plan by that land surveyor, and I'll bring this up at a later point, they're tied into the survey network that we're tied into. So they tied into the National Geodetic Vertical Datum. And horizontally, they were also tied in. Being a land surveyor, they're treating the site just like we would when we start a project. We tie in to mass cords as well. So this job is coordinated to this old data from 1999, and that test pit data is valid. And they found groundwater to be at 205.8. We're proposing to set the bottom of our chambers 3 feet above that groundwater elevation. To me, that's a prudent way of approaching treating stormwater in this site. There's plenty of freeboard for the stormwater to be able to recharge and be offset to groundwater.
so are you planning on bringing in fill?
No, sir. That's the
I
other
thought
beauty
you
of this
said
project. We're
I thought you
minimum.
said groundwater was 2.5 feet down,
No,
sir.
the elevation 205.
205, okay.
Yeah. So they've suggested that an O&M plan needs to be provided for the site. Again, I think that the order of conditions through the continuing conditions would be more than sufficient. Again, I don't believe this rises up to the level of having a separate O&M plan. It's a single-family home. They're proposed, and there was no O&M plan as part of the original development plan, and these site improvements are accessory to the principal use. It just doesn't rise to the level of needing something separate. I think we can do it in the order. We made a statement about water quality and quantity being addressed with a proposal. The infiltrative drainage system that we have here creates about 400 cubic feet of ready storage. So when there's a rainfall event, the water is going to go into this void that's in between the stones. And then it's also going to now have an efficient way to get back into the ground. So rather than just running off, because typically that's what stormwater will do, is take the path of least resistance, it would have this void space with which to be captured within and then brought back into the ground.
So
again,
you're infiltrating in place as opposed to runoff
correct.
directly
Correct.
overland to the
Because
water?
right now, all this
Okay.
water just runs off. So we're trying to put in a system to address this. Even though this driveway is already there, we're trying to put in some mitigation here to make this better. The Cultec 150 recharger chambers that we're proposing here and here, we're putting those in accordance with the manufacturer's specifications. They are interconnected. Now you can see this blue line here, and then there's a blue line that comes across, and then there's a riprap swale right here. That's how these chambers will work. They'll fill up, they'll get to the top of the chamber. If there's a storm event that's in excess of what the ground can absorb, they will go off in this direction to the northeast. This filter strip, however, will be, again, an efficient way for stormwater to get into this zone, but if this should be overcome, it's going to just drain down to here. And if the commission wants to, we can put the same interconnect in and bring it across to this side. I just didn't think it was warranted. But if you feel as though you want to do that, we can certainly put a pipe in to bring this across. I have no problem with it. I will tell you that it will be lower so that the stone here will not have the same capacity to hold all the water because it can't rise up to the top of it or it wouldn't be able to go through the driveway. You follow me? So it would have to go down at the bottom. So therefore it would have very little effect going forward. And this is the paragraph where I actually went on about the surveyor being tied into the North American Vertical Datum of 1988, so that we were able to corroborate and know that the data was good. We didn't have electric services on here. it's a good point that they brought up. We did show now that there's an interconnect coming from the house. So that's labeled electric service. That's mostly in the outside the 100-foot buffer zone. There's a section where it would come back in to get towards the barn. Did the same thing for the pool. If you want to just pan to the right map, though, I can show where that is.
So
the
electric
pool-
service would
Electric
be run,
service would just come back out. It's going to be a
it'll
shallow.
be run below ground.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm sorry. It would just come out. We had showed you where the control equipment would be here. So that's where the electric service would come in. And then coming back, the last point was this reserve area question. So right here, this setback is drawn at 6 feet. I will acknowledge that. 10 is the requirement. 25 would be if we had a foundation wall here. We do not. This is just a frost wall. And what I would also say to you is, though, this leaching here is about 800 square feet with a soil condition that this site supports at being sand and gravel. And with the AI technologies, this is a 400 square foot area, so it would be half of this if I was to replace it. And that's if I was to replace it in this same configuration right here. We could easily move it to this location. In many cases, people are putting their leaching area right back where the other one is. Because it wasn't that the soils would be unsuitable at that area, especially on a site like this. Age might be the reason why you have to replace it at this site, whereas other sites may have not been proven properly. So in this case, this is about where this leaching area would need to be. So we showed this strictly for informational purposes, because it's a record plan. We weren't trying to ignore that and just say it didn't exist. But by the same token, it's not causing a restrictive condition here. This barn can be located here. This site can support a replacement soil absorption
So
system.
if you had to replace the system, you could adjust the location to meet the required setbacks.
Absolutely, that's it. And if we were to keep it right here, all we would have to do is just shift this slightly to get the 4 feet, because I didn't label it as 6 feet off, but I went into CAD and we confirmed that. So the only last point I would if I could.
No, go ahead, and then I'll.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Well, I was just gonna say, and you helped answer my question, it's like, if that reserve, SAS doesn't have to be there, then why aren't we shifting this proposed barn up into that area and keeping it further away from the wetland resource area? Just shift it northward. You could take that and move it up slightly. It doesn't have to be sitting down as far as it is.
Grade-wise, we're on contour here. I would have to pull this back, but sure, I suppose if we wanted to twist this a bit, we could.
Well, I'm just saying, he can make our setback by shifting it up.
Well, I believe I am making your setback, sir. I thought we were doing that by shifting this out.
Well, I mean, and if you I don't know if rotating it, because you would end up rotating it around
Push
this
in.
point,
Yeah, right.
and it,
So you see what I'm saying? Right now he has it like this. Why can't it come up and then be tilted slightly and give us
So that it's more parallel to the edge of the driveway?
exactly? Because it's already impacted there. From what I hear, it's lawn. I'm not confined by the reserve SIS there, because he can put it somewhere else, or he can put it right back in place where his primary is. So I have all of that space there. So why do I have to have that pushed, upwards, within 60 feet, where I can clearly make 70 or 75? And give him his 30 by 50.
Yeah, the only thing I would be concerned about is just by changing the geometry, that then somehow we're going to affect a little bit more ground on this side here.
I really don't see you.
To that.
If I take this proposed rectangle and move it up further, I don't see myself disturbing more on the left-hand side of it.
Move
I'm
it
just
up or
bringing it up.
rotate it?
I'm just taking that whole thing and I'm bringing it up more closer to that red line.
Which is the edge of the pavement.
Yeah, somewhere in there, but I have plenty to give myself the extra buffer.
Well, we're at 60 feet now, so if you determined that you wanted this to be 65, I see 5 feet being here. I'm not sure more than that, but certainly 5 feet would be available. I don't see a problem with that. And so
I'm just taking that and I'm kind of going like that and moving it up slightly at the
So
same time.
you're talking about rotating as well as sliding it up?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm
Do
just.
you want to point
Yeah,
for me and just,
so you're saying this corner moves
so I'm
up.
taking that and then move your hand up slightly. Yeah, it can go up in that way and then rotate it.
Oh, and then rotate?
Yeah, I think you can do that,
The
move it
shortest
up
distance-
and
the
rotate
shortest
it and,
distance is here, which is 60 feet. If you bring
Right.
it up and rotate it, this will actually come down a little. It'll probably
Yeah,
be si-
yeah.
I don't know if it will. I
probably
think I'll be
70
pushing
probably
it
70
and
feet
moving
or
it and I
something.
think I'll be getting a lot closer to the required.
I think if I was to hold this and rotate this up just a bit, you know, I'm gonna be more in line with this anyways, which is fine. I would prefer not to rotate this down or cause more activity here. This was really the pinch point, and we didn't want to change that pavement edge here.
Sorry. Still can't see why you can't take this and bring this area up here like this and give myself a little more space up here.
So can you use,
This is calibrated.
Not like that somewhere, but you know, I can do that.
Yeah. Okay.
There's no need for it to be this close down here, not when I have all this space up here.
I mean, this is your wetland line. That's just.
Yeah, that's the wetland line,
Yeah,
I know,
that's-
and that's 60 feet from the wetland line, right?
Right, to the corner.
Yeah, the corner.
So my setback right there is what, 60?
60, yeah.
Right, and I think you can get 65 or more there.
Probably could get 65 or 70, I guess, yeah.
and if you did that, you wouldn't have to worry about trimming back the trees. Gives you a little bit more space from the trees as the trees continue to grow.
Okay.
The only concern is the slope, right? Does it drop off?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to have some separation there, no matter what, to resolve the slope, but, you know, there's certainly some room. I'm not, 75 may be a challenge, but, you know, 65 to 70-ish, you know, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we would ask somebody to do that, because they have the ability.
So with the way the barn is envisioned,
Mhm.
is the intent for access from the short side or the long side?
Is right here.
Driving.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
red,
that's, we're trying to platform off of this existing driveway here.
Okay, so you would drive into the building on the short side, the shorter side?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
yeah, because
So
here's,
we'd still be able to do that if it went up further.
yeah, the
Yeah,
red
You
is
just have to
the,
watch the grades here, that's all, to
Mhm.
ensure that we can properly keep this edge, you know, exposed. It's not a
You
retaining wall.
don't want it going underground?
No, right.
or below grade.
Because of the way, the methodology of building this. So the only last piece I had was that was concerned about this separation. It's like, I want to say about 225, 230 feet between the back of this house and this proposed barn. That's a pretty good distance. You know, I know we're in a rural area here, but I'm sure that the existing dwellings between themselves, between properties, are much closer than that, generally speaking. So, and there is a tree line here that's not being affected. So that's it. That's the response. We have this R2 plan that did get submitted, I would say late, but timely in that I'm trying to respond to questions that were raised today for us. So thank you for the opportunity to present that, and I look forward to your support.
So a question with the overflow pipe from the Caltech infiltrators.
Yeah.
The sizing on that pipe is what?
The overflow pipe, 4 inches.
4 inches, okay, so in the case of a real deluge, that pipe diameter is actually going to kind of control the amount of flow that gets to the end of that pipe, so you're not having a huge gush. It will just take time for as excess water comes in, that becomes kind of a control mechanism as to how much water is coming out of the pipe at the discharge point.
Yeah, very much so. And then the gutters, what would happen is if it was being to the point where the 4-inch pipe couldn't handle it, there's gonna be backwater through the system, and you're gonna see it at the interface of the drop from the gutter and its sleeve
Okay,
at the ground. So that's when you'd see it. Again,
So we're
talking
not-
about very high storm events,
No.
I don't, it could happen, I'm not gonna say it can't, but
okay,
it's not expected to be impactful, let's put it that way.
okay.
There are many gutter systems on homes, and by not having it discharge onto the ground, that's the key. you've got a place for it to be absorbed in the ground versus just running off on the surface.
So are there any other commissioners have questions? Matt?
No, I do not have anything further to add.
Okay. Do any members of the audience have any comments or questions on this project? If you come up to the mic, please.
Yeah, Eric Reeder, 85 Acton Road. I was the one who raised the questions over email on Monday. I was here at the last meeting. As I said, not an environmental or civil engineer. I want to have this entire plan evaluated by an engineer, just to make sure that my home was protected and that if there were environmental concerns, I wasn't coming here wasting the applicant's time or the commission's time on speculation. Hope everybody can appreciate that. If you wouldn't mind, could you go back to page 16 really quick? Just a question on this berm. Okay. So there's a question about this, I would ask kind of twofold on it. This berm design here, is this for the purpose of like, I see that it's only on one side in the diagram.
Are you talking about the area where Matt had talked about maybe, so there's kind of a natural berm,
Right.
and the talk is to add a Cape Cod or a pavement berm?
Just talking in general right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yep. So the red line, which is on my land, is part of the easement. If you go to your pictures in 17, the only thing that I would say about this is the confluence. The part of this that it's at its lowest, if you go and look on the left-hand side, that goes right into the back of my property where the fence is. That is the lowest point where that runoff would be. And that has continued, that, you know, if you're going to do stormwater mitigation, the purpose of the easement is, you know, for transit to the house and for utilities. The stormwater would have to be mitigated off my property with respect to the driveway.
So, so Matt, is this the area where you talked about bringing in additional earthen berm?
Yeah, to recreate kind of the earthen berm that's, you know, on both the north and south of the driveways.
Yep.
Because, you know, in viewing it in the field and also, again, you know, going back to the first revision, this contour, 1 foot contours, Peter?
Yeah, it should be.
So this is the 209 contour that shows, you know, that exact condition. So again, my thought, again, proposal, you know, as opposed to increasing, you know, putting a Cape Cod berm as per the common driveway plan, or, you know, as what was originally proposed, you know, focusing the effort on this stretch, you know, between contour 211 on the you know, the south side, back up, you know, so that there is no longer this 209 dip that does enter onto your property. And again, don't know whether that was a naturally occurring condition or if that was something that, you know, occurred when construction of the house originally did. But my thought, you know, and again, back to the photos, and kind of this dip, as you've discussed, right in, I mean, you can see the slope go down, and, you know, this is that section of elevation 210, 209, that does extend onto the back of the property at 85 Acton Road.
So my concern is, I know Mr. Timlin asked about this, and I get his point. You know, he's worried about his septic tank. He asked about this at the last meeting. He lives at 87, that you can see off there in the top right. He's concerned that if there's too much water there, it's gonna go over onto his side and cause issues with his septic tank. I get it. But if that all of a sudden becomes a concrete barrier that goes the entire length, and I don't recall if it was that way before, that water is once again going to redirect potentially over to my side.
So I think, Matt, what you're talking about is here at the edge of the vegetation, there would be a berm. So the 209 elevation on the 85 Acton Road's property, that grade there would stay, but there would be a berm raised up so that water would no longer flow in that direction. It would.
Right, the naturally flowing, condition of, from the
So it would
culvert.
stay in the driveway.
Yes, it would stay on the driveway and get to, again, this stone infiltration trench. And again, you may have to kind of readjust the location from the original location, shown here, and, defer to a little bit of,
If I could just bring up one thing though, because what I don't want to do, I'm certainly fine in doing this to protect the abutter here. I'm in 100% agreement of this. What I don't want to do though is then isolate this, because I've raised this up so whatever precipitation does fall in and does not infiltrate on its own, it will not have an outlet. So I'd be creating this captured zone. So in order to really do this, you'd be going back and filling all this in. We're not doing that, for sure. So
Okay.
what we could do, however, is that if we are gonna put the berm here, that we would then have a pipe that would be on the back side of this so that we at least daylight what's happening here, over here. Because if there is any ponding, it would have to build up to get over these contours to get back down to here.
Right.
That's not gonna happen.
So
We're
you-
not gonna do that, yeah. I can already see where this is going.
Creating an egress for that lower
Yeah,
area.
yeah, so what I would do is I have no problem stopping the water, the surface water from going in this direction, but at the same time, when we stop it, we need to make sure there's a way for it to get out at the same time. So I would definitely do that, and we'll just move this down. There's no reason why it has to be here. And honestly, if we were in agreement to not do this whole berm here, I'm not even sure we really need this, because the reason for this was only because of the fact that we were creating concentrated flow here. If we're not gonna put that physical berm in along this edge and we let the water just bleed out as it naturally would off the pavement edge, because there's no evidence of it being a problem, then we wouldn't need this at all. And we could just take care of this problem here. So I'll leave that to you folks. But to this gentleman's point, I have no problem blocking this off, but when we do so, we will put a pipe in. It doesn't have to be anything big.
Okay, but just a
Probably-
means for
probably like an
the
8-inch
the
or a
water
couple of
to
6-inch pipes.
exit.
Just to have the ability to leave, just because I don't want surface water to, if it doesn't infiltrate, it's gotta have a place to go.
Is there a natural break that could be done for that instead?
No, because well, I
That's
suppose
there.
if you're gonna stop the water from going this way, then you don't berm this up. You know what I mean? So we could just do the pipe here too, that would be the other option, is just create a low spot here. In other words, acknowledge it, it's coming here, capture it here and bring it across.
Well, I'll leave my engineer to get feedback on this anyways, or leave it over here. The other question I had was last time, Mr. Gozo, you brought up that you wanted to see the infiltration rate on those.
Not the rate, I wanted a confirmation of what they told us, that they said it was a 25-year storm.
Okay,
That the infiltration,
is this sufficient, or is there something
yes.
above and beyond that you're
And
looking
it's at
for?
the top there, it's actually 50-year. I don't know if that's because the number was incorrect or because the barn was shrunk.
Okay.
No,
Yeah,
so,
so with this, we used HydroCAD, just ran the model with the soils that are here. They're just highly infiltrative. That's the point, is that the soil can absorb this water.
So that's both on the plan of record and in the draft order of conditions.
Understood. Maybe you have some questions.
Hi, my name is Kristen LeBrie. I'm from Howard Stead Hudson. Going back to the berm, recommended a pipe just creates a maintenance issue. That'll get clogged. It will end up isolating it anyway. If you can do almost like an emergency weir on a pond.
do you want to try the laser pointer? Show us
So
what,
if
what do you want?
so kind of what it's at, but if you create the berm and then cut almost like an emergency weir into it, so that way the water from here can escape still at that 209, because the 208 is on the other side of the driveway. Creating a natural cut, almost like what it is, but cleaning it up, creating it the path to go in across the driveway, and then down here, this shifted down, it would make, I think, a little bit more sense just based on the natural low point. But putting a pipe there is just gonna create, because it's heavily wooded, it's gonna clog with
Not gonna
leaves
disagree.
and just not work.
Yeah, we'll just pitch the asphalt at that level, we'll make a firm low spot. So whatever that contour is, we'll take the lowest point there and then just cut the driveway so it's lower. It's all overhead services, so you don't have anything underground, you got a well, so you can cut the driveway, that's fine.
So our other concern was not necessarily the proximity to the house, but the the well is in the rear back here, so the water quality is a concern. Regarding the testing, we would like to see current testing as if you provided for a new construction testing that was 25 years old, it wouldn't be accepted for a new build. That testing is out of date, and we'd like to see new testing for the groundwater level, as 25 years later, it may have risen up. As for the grading, if you could go to the, kind of zoom into right in front of the garage. We do have questions regarding this grading. I know the elevation is set to 212.5, which would result in a 212.5 here. We have a 212 here that wraps outside but doesn't touch the driveway, and a 211 here. So there seems to be a grade missing in between here. There should be the 212 would have to cross somewhere in order to get from 212.5 back down to 211, which raises the question of the proposed finished grade above this system being 212, and the finished grade above this system being 211.5, and the top of the chambers being 211. It doesn't provide enough cover over those systems. Recommended is 6 inches of stone and then at least another 6 inches of loam. This one has 6 inches of stone with no loam over it, and this one, based on the proposed grade, does make sense, but the grading itself doesn't. I think we just need a few more spot grades to feel comfortable with it. As for the capacity of these chambers, is there a number of chambers that are being proposed? Or if we could just see the HydroCAT, I think that would showing how many chambers there are and what the capacity is and what storms were used, we'd feel more comfortable. And then if you could go to the R2, our only other question, I just couldn't read it from back there, is there an outlet elevation for that emergency pipe? The 4-inch we think is fine.
Yeah, 2095.
And the bottom of the system is 2095. They're
That's-
coming out at the top.
They're coming, you can see the invert on the other side is at 210.5, and then we're working our way back. So that's how it was set up. So I know
Yeah.
Walter put those on there, so I'm just assuming those were the grades that needed to be there. So I'm gonna assume they're right.
So if it's coming out at 210.5 over here though, by the time it gets over there,
No, it's a
assuming
flat,
there's a pitch.
there's no pitch. It's not intended to be pitched. This is a static system. I know that for a fact. So we're not, you're trying to let the water come up, rise up to a level and then run.
Is there a reason why there's two systems? Could it all be one, like, could it just be moved to one side?
The roof drains are gonna drop on either end of the building. That's just traditionally how we do it. I think that's the way to go.
And
I'd
those are gonna
rather-
be underground piped
Yeah.
directly in, or is it overland flow into like a, okay. Yeah, so we would like to see the capacity or just how many number of chambers it is, just to check the capacity of it, if it would truly hold at least a 25-year storm. Because our concern is if those do overflow, excess of if it's much too small, the 4-inch will turn into a pressurized pipe. Yes, it can control if it is truly sized correctly, but if it's not, it'll turn to a pressurized pipe in a 25-year storm and cause issues. Or it could overflow out the downspouts and create issues into that intermittent stream. Because it would be during raining season, high rain season, where that intermittent stream is present. Those are
Maybe,
our,
just for information, I think you changed on the plan that it's a 50-year storm, it's sized.
Yeah, that's what he checked. Yeah.
yeah, I guess if we could see the HydroCAT of that, we'd be comfortable. Ensuring that all makes sense.
Can I ask one other question? You have the utility for power. Is there an intention to apply or to deploy plumbing in the building?
Oh, this is just a
There's no
gentleman's
water
barn. There's
service in
not,
the
no,
building?
no.
So there would be no water coming through the building to support plumbing.
Okay.
So the utility is just electric service?
Right.
Can that be something in the order of conditions? Because, we can agree to it here today, but, somebody brought up the point, homes change ownership. And if somebody down the line takes this home over and they say, hey, we're gonna go put plumbing into this, you yourself
They need a building permit, right?
Yeah, they need a permit.
Yeah, I mean, they need a building permit. I'm not sure I would see that building permit because it would just be interior.
But it
I
would
don't.
also trigger a septic permit.
Yeah, because they would have to come before. Yeah, they'd have to tie into the tank.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
or and there'd be pump chamber because again, that's below. Yeah, there'd be pump chamber, so there'd be some certainly some revisions to.
But there's nothing that's going on here that would preclude somebody coming back in and seeking it in the future.
No.
Right.
And the reason I bring that up is it even came up in the last meeting, this question about if you're deploying plumbing inside and you have hoses and stuff in there, and there's no plan for a drain in here right now. Ms. Wheeler, I think you brought that up.
Well, it
You
just-
were concerned about chemicals and things like that.
And that was, that was in terms of, was there gonna be a floor drain, would any spills be
Yep.
contained? I mean, yeah, you just, short of running a hose to wash off the camper or the RV, I mean,
I assume you'd be doing that at his house, right?
There's no water.
well, there's, yeah, cause you'd have to do it with running a hose because there's no water service being brought to the building. So yeah, you'd either have to drive up to the house
Or run a hose.
or wherever you do the hose.
Yeah.
Okay.
The rest of us do.
All right, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
so,
So there are some revisions to the plan and specific, again, between the removal of the Cape Cod berm, whatever the design is that kind of comes.
We're just gonna change the grade of the driveway.
Right, I
because
mean,
that's
it-
really
you
what
know.
that comes down to, is to eliminate the low, create a new low spot, if you will, that will then take the water to the northeast.
Right, but that's gonna, change, so, that's kind of a change. And then the relocation or kind of rotation, shifting of the barn, that would be, I would like to verify with the Board of Health, the comment, the applicant's representative's comment regarding, just because I don't know enough about setbacks to reserve systems.
If they conclude that we have to be 10 feet away, then we would have to be 10 feet away. I just don't see where they would do that because of
Again,
the fact that what the regulations state.
I defer to the Board of Health on those types of,
Yeah, I'm fine with
get something in writing from them to,
Yeah.
kind of,
so we need to see an updated plan based on all the conversations we've had tonight.
yes. And then some, kind of just relocation of the signs, again, kind of,
Yeah.
At corners.
yeah, the corners of the start,
And then the one in between that.
Right, yeah, exactly, kind of.
Yes, so it looks like, excuse me, so 3 additional signs?
Yeah, and or if it can be, you reconfigure a couple so the distances
Okay.
is not as much, and it just kind of, if they fall more naturally at 50 feet or something, in that stretch,
We'll work out something
yeah,
with you, that's fine.
Yeah.
certainly. And then, defer to the commission regarding the last set of comments in terms of, whether or not we'd want, some HydroCAD confirmation. Again, they did raise the point of the soil testing being from the original house. Typically, and again, not apples to apples, the engineering department, when reviewing larger scale developments where, maybe access to a stormwater BMP feature would require, the removal of trees, and, it's gonna be one of those, as work is going on, if the commission is amenable, could certainly include a special condition to the effect that, the soils be evaluated in the location of the 2 Caltech chambers, as they're being, so we're not digging new test pits just to confirm we're getting confirmation that the soils, evaluate the soils as, work is going on, and then, have that.
That would seem reasonable to me, because
So basically a confirmation report of the soil conditions and the groundwater level at the time that the infiltrators are installed?
Or prior to work can, again,
when the barn's being built first.
Yeah.
right, kind of, as early on in the, design, so if things need to move or if we need to, confer,
Make
things,
adjustments?
we're not too, the barn foundation isn't poured, but, we have erosion controls in and, we can make, those types of adjustments, that would be my recommendation specifically to that kind of, comment. I don't.
Moving the barn.
Yes, and that goes with updates to the plan. Marilyn?
I just think the abutters should have what you said tonight in writing.
Well, I did submit,
No, the abutter, yes, if you could also send me it so I can have your
So
name
that
for the
we can
meeting
be sure
minutes.
that it's been addressed, so we're not saying that it wasn't addressed.
Your comments.
Yeah.
Oh, the comments I made.
Yes.
Yes, that way we can be sure that it's been.
Have you had a chance to review the order of
I
conditions?
did, I only had one comment. But I think we're gonna have to make some other adjustments, unfortunately. And it was only because of the square footage. We had reduced the amount of impervious area with the changes that we had made. So the number was off a bit. I think Matt had the original number, not the new number, but.
That was the comment you had on the order? Oh.
Yes, sir, that was all, yeah.
Okay.
So we were there, we were close. The finish line was in sight.
And if you could also, if pavement is changing, just include, so we'll make sure to update that
Yep.
in any draft.
Yeah, so I guess the one takeaway tonight would be the commission's perspective on the berm, because I would rather just take it off the plan if we're not going to do that new asphalt berm on the north side of this driveway. I would prefer not to see it personally. I think it's just a maintenance issue. It's gonna end up unraveling at a future date anyways, and there's really no impact out there.
Because there's a natural
natural-
berm behind it.
Right.
You've got 20 years of experience.
Yeah.
There's no
And just you're creating concentrated flow if we put it there. I would rather not do that. I would rather diffuse the flow over a larger surface area than to concentrate it in one spot. Is that a straw poll? I don't know how you like to do things. I would rather just take it off the plan.
No, yeah, I mean, if the commission's, kind of get the commission's thoughts and.
With not reinstalling a Cape Cod berm and allowing that.
Would the engineer for the neighbor get a comment on that?
Well, just really quick, sorry, you want me to come to the mic, I bet.
Well, I think.
It's on your property.
Well, hold on, it's the neighbor to the north that had brought up the concern last time.
So, Kristen LaGree, HSH, based on the natural grading, it looks like the water would currently runs off that driveway and to the north, the neighbor to the north. If you remove that berm, at least on the first property, that water's gonna continue to run to that northern neighbor. The berm allows it to channelize, run down the driveway into the gravel riprap area that's proposed. So leaving the berm on the left side of the gravel riprap makes sense. Removing the berm on the right side of that, I think, also makes sense. So kind of meeting in the middle, leaving the left half, removing the right half.
I think, could you use a pointer?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not sure what you
So,
said.
So-
The whole thing.
and, what's the point? So currently water, based on contours, runs this way. So if a water lands here, it's gonna run that way. Leaving berm all the way up until here allows water, if it lands here, it'll hit the berm and it will run down and then exit there.
But that's not what's happening in the field, Kristen.
It's not.
So
It's
I
the tree-
understand if there's a natural berm.
There's a natural berm there. There's a tree line.
Yeah, actually, can we, the pictures on,
Yeah.
So if the natural berm is the entire length,
Hmm.
yeah, I mean,
then
and
what is, I guess,
Zoom a little bit?
that's leave that
The
to the
dri-
northern neighbor if they're
Yeah,
having,
the driveway's cut down.
Yeah, I mean, you see kind of, again, here's kind of the grade. Use the thing for, get that out of the way.
which
So,
1 foot
you know,
contours doesn't like, you can't read it on a plan, I guess.
Yeah, in the field, I thought the kind of existing grades of the vegetation, or the existing topography, is doing a better job than a Cape Cod berm. Because it does, and even in, much to, I know you talked about the 1 foot contours. But, zooming into, this is the, so this is the high point of 211, and the berm, it does continue, it's not going directly, because this is kind of the knoll, this is the knoll that's shown.
Yeah, and remember I mentioned to you outside of work areas, we're relying on LiDAR data. That LiDAR's not gonna, it's pretty damn good for what we get for data for it, but it's more regional based, not to get into micro analysis. So there's definitely a ridge there that you're just not gonna see in the LiDAR analysis, unfortunately.
I mean, the other thing to point out too, if you go back to the map, so what you don't see on the diagram is my driveway runs here, okay? There is a turnaround that was designed right there that basically was for, I think it was an agreement when they built that easement. It's always been there since I've lived there, that like, hey, it's a turnaround so that both homes can easily get out Acton Road facing straight. The water tends to pool right there. Sorry, I've had coffee, so my hand's not that straight. But it really tends to pool there. I don't know if that changes your perspective on what you would do with that berm, or does it make sense to go on either side? But again, I wasn't the one who asked about this, it was Mr. Timlin.
Getting a bit far afield from the project site too.
Yes, so
About the area up near Acton Road and the nearest project.
based on your original question, if there is a natural berm already there, we are comfortable with the Cape Cod berm coming out, given it does not affect.
Well, it's, the Cape Cod berm, as I understand it, is already gone, and the talk was, do we put it back?
The proposed Cape Cod berm coming out,
Okay,
sorry.
yeah.
If there is a natural berm along this entire section of the driveway, then we are comfortable with it, with the commission's choice to have it removed from the plan.
Okay,
As long as there is a natural berm that entire course.
Based on your observation of the drainage on the existing driveway, the water is not going off in one spot, it's not
I don't-
scouring, it's.
The only location that I observed where the low point was, is this,
that's the only place that water was going off the.
that I observed, that I perceived where water would pool and go off the driveway, affecting one of the abutting properties, not in a naturalized
I
area.
don't think that you need to do anything with the existing berm or whatever you want to call it on the 85 property. In 85R, some kind of a connection between the water and traps on the left and get it to the right.
Right, if the driveway is pitched the other way, and then that's, we've addressed the.
So, continue to the April 23rd meeting, which is our next meeting.
Yes.
Okay. Can I have a motion to continue the public hearing to April 23rd? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Moving on to our 7:25 PM agenda item. It's release peer review escrow for 37 Powers Road.
This escrow amount was created for the peer review of the abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, 334-1856, as the order of resource area delineation was issued by the commission, was not appealed by anybody for that matter, and it's no longer can be used for.
Appeal period.
Yeah, I'd request the release of the peer review escrow that was created for this file.
Can I have a motion to that effect?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Oh.
What?
We have a
Legal notice.
legal notice. I forgot to print it out. If somebody would like to read
Jim,
it.
can you do the honors?
Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40 of the Wetlands Protection Act, and Westford's non-zoning wetland bylaw, Chapter 171. The Westford Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, April 9th, 2025, at 7:25 p.m. in Meeting Room 201 at Town Hall, 55 Main Street. Consider the notice of intent application of Zom Living LLC for installation of portions of parking areas, landscaping, gravel paths, fitness equipment areas, sports court, a retaining wall, and renaturalization of degraded wetland buffer areas associated with the proposed 530-unit multifamily residential development within 100 feet of bordering vegetated wetlands and bank at 37 Powers Road, Assessor's Map 11, Parcel 75, Lot 1.
All right, thank you. Good evening. For the record, Brian Goodrow with Hancock Associates, also David Cowell with Hancock Associates. He's our senior wetland scientist, and I'm a civil engineer on this project. So we were before the commission a couple months ago for the ANRAD. The ORAD was issued. Obviously, the escrow was just released on that. So we're here before you this evening for a notice of intent for the project proper. So 37 Powers Road is a Westford Earth Materials, so it's an aggregate company. They have gravel, mulch, all kinds of commercial activities there. And the proposal is multifamily residential. So there's 530 rental units proposed across 5 different multi-story buildings, along with 2 amenity buildings. There's 813 parking spaces, as well as all the associated infrastructure that goes along with that. So power comes off of Powers Road. There is water within Powers, and actually as a part of our planning board application, which we are currently open and within hearings on, we'll be extending an underground water main from Powers Road to the multifamily property to the northwest, Bell, Westford. So there's going to be an interconnection there. With respect to stormwater management, so right now the existing gravel pit has essentially no stormwater controls. There are a number of gravel ponds that were discussed as a part of the ANRAD that became jurisdictional, but those are essentially the stormwater features that are out there. When it rains, water hits the gravel and kind of sheet flows in all directions unmitigated. There are a couple of catch basins on site that basically feed pipes directly into those ponds. As a part of our proposal, what we're doing is bringing the site into full stormwater management compliance. So with 7 underground systems scattered throughout the development, we're going to be capturing stormwater, treating it to both state standards as well as the local stormwater bylaw. So that's treatment for phosphorus, that's enhanced TSS to 90%. And then ultimately we're going to mirror existing drainage patterns. So with stormwater sheeting off the existing site kind of to the north and to the south primarily, we're mirroring that in the developed condition here. So we've specifically looked at how much water, both rates and volumes, where it goes, and we're looking to kind of mirror what's happening today. And providing enhanced recharge as well. So it's very compact gravel with the heavy equipment that's out there and the earth moving, efforts. In the post-development condition, we can capture that water and then put it into the ground. There's also going to be a wastewater treatment facility on site to support the 530 units, and the infrastructure for that is gonna be located in the very central portion, so not within any of the jurisdictional buffers. There are a number of leach fields that are shown on the plan, primarily in the green space, the central common, if you will, the center area of it. There is gonna be a small building up towards Powers Road, off the entrance that will house, the equipment for it. But again, that is gonna be complying with state standards for wastewater, so that's fully regulated by DEP. The design and kind of science behind the development of that is ongoing right now. But that is our scheme for wastewater. Now, for the buffer areas which kind of surround the site to the north, to the west, and to the south, what we've done with the development is really centralize the parking in the buildings in the middle of the site, and then as you work towards the edges, kind of stop development and transition into more of a restoration and naturalization scheme. It's landscaping, but it's not intended to be manicured. It's intended to provide new soil that's not present there today, seed mixes and native plantings to allow those areas to naturalize. Now, the caveat to that is we are proposing a public passive recreation piece to this project. And it revolves around a walking trail that surrounds the entire project. So from Powers Road, northwest along the western property line, and then towards the south, there's about 0.85 mile of walking trail. And that's gonna be a public amenity. That's part of our planning board process. That's part of this project under the MBTA Communities Overlay. And secondary to the walking trail and the passive recreation, there are a couple of nature overlooks that are proposed on that. There's one, why don't I point to this? There's one nature overlook right here, kind of overlooking the gravel pond in this area. And then to the south, we have another one down here in this corner that comes off of the walking trail. And I guess while I have the laser, the walking trail kind of goes around the entire perimeter of the project. So with the passive recreation piece, which I think is what we really want to focus on this evening for discussion, because some of it does fall within the 50-foot no disturb buffer. And again, the thought process here for laying everything out is we try to start by putting everything in the center of the site and then work out from parking, from buildings, and then shift into this amenity and naturalization scheme. The walking trail that goes from Powers Road up and along the northern side, this is actually going to be a multi-purpose path for bikers. It's going to be a little bit wider. It's 8 feet wide. We're proposing pervious asphalt on that, and that is going to be maintained year-round. So that is the only piece that has pavement associated with it. It is pervious pavement, and it will be maintained. And essentially, that gets people from Powers up into Bell Westford and then up into 110. So we're creating a pedestrian connectivity through our site and then through adjacent sites to get up to the sidewalks on 110. There is a small fitness area that's here, but that is...
Yeah, we can go to the plans.
Yeah, so we were just looking at the index sheet. We blew up kind of the site plan along the entire perimeter. So that multi-use path is right here. That's going to be the wider one. This is going to be a small fitness station. This is your 50-foot buffer, 75, and then 100. So we're outside of that 50. We're still inside jurisdictional. This is the nature overlook that I had mentioned earlier. That is within the 50. So if you look at this small section here, part of the trail does cross into that. And I'll let Dave dive into the kind of vegetation piece of this. But basically, just to kind of summarize, we're centering our development to be outside of jurisdictional areas as much as possible. We're then transitioning into a restoration and naturalization plan that has a passive recreation component to it. Dave, do you want to start talking about, maybe the restoration a little bit, what the seed mixes are, the different tiers that we have, which are all represented by the hatching that's on the plan?
Thank you, Brian. And I think Brian did a good lead-in because it makes my job easier, that I think he's depicted a lot of what the intent is. So, again, I don't know how many of you have actually been on site. In fact, one of the things I'd like to coordinate is perhaps a coordinated site walk of the site to go look at these areas. So in the existing state as it is, being a long-utilized gravel pit, it's the majority of the areas in the 50-foot no disturb zone and the 75-foot no build zone exist as what I describe as moonscaped. It's devoid of any vegetative cover, it's devoid of any soils or supporting vegetation, especially as it pertains to the ponds. On those sides, those ponds they were man-made, and they have riprap slopes, and those riprap slopes have some vegetation on them. The vegetation that's on them it's fairly sparse, and it's mostly invasive species. There are some nice native species in there, like speckled alder interspersed in there. So we coordinated with a landscape contractor to design a low-impact balance of specifically ecological restoration with this passive recreation component to have a trail that goes through there. So I worked with the landscape architect in review of exclusively use of native species of plants and trees and shrubs that are in the planting schedule, native seed mixes. There is a specification that we're going to need to import some clean, organic, rich loam and topsoil to create growing substrate where none exists today in these zones, the 50-foot and the 75-foot setback zones.
The whole site.
So, yeah, I mean, essentially, right, it's devoid of topsoil as a sand and gravel pit. It's all.
That's like everything else got sold.
Pretty much.
So, yeah. So, I don't know, to the benefit of the Conservation Commission's time, I don't know whether or not it makes sense to go page by page through the 50-foot and 75, or whether or not it makes sense to get out on a site walk. But who's the landscape?
Copley Wolf.
Copley Wolf, right, I knew Mike's name. So we have a native planting schedule for that entire area. We've tried as hard as we could to create low impact design to, I think that in the grand scheme of things, permitting a small passive recreational component of having a trail through there, given the large scale restoration that I think we're doing. We can always crunch numbers, but it's tens of thousands of square feet around all these wetland resource areas, all of which are degraded in the 50-foot and 75-foot zones in their existing state.
Just something that I would like to call attention to while we're looking at one of these blown up plans here. So if you notice the couple of different hatching areas that are on the plan, in addition to our planting symbols here. So the hatch with a specific plus on it, that's gonna be an import of loam so that, we can grow stuff out there. And then it's gonna be, conservation restoration, seed mix.
Yep.
And we tried to put that in every place within the 50 that made sense, and we extended it on either side of the trail, as site conditions allowed. And then as we shifted further from the jurisdictional areas, we went into a naturalized planting, which is a different type of seed mix. It's not manicured. I mean, this stuff is supposed to grow up. Maybe you mow it once a year, a season.
Yeah.
But it's not the same as when you look at kind of the interior landscaping areas that have this more solid lined hatch that's associated. That is manicured lawn and with more ornamental plantings that are there. So the landscape architect, Copley Wolf, tried to bring in a series of different zones, if you will, as we work our way from the resource area through the buffer to the development proper. And I think the sidewalk will be telling as we walk around these areas, kind of within the proposed trail, where you can really see what the existing condition is, what we have to start with, and then what we're trying to do as a part of this project to restore and naturalize that area.
That's right. Yeah, as Brian implied, when I was working with the landscape architect, I was implying that areas that are closer to the bank are still moist. It does transition very abruptly to uplands because especially where the ponds are maybe like 4-foot embankments of riprap, and then at the top of slope, it immediately transitions into uplands. So, but all these are native seed mix blends, as I heard the prior applicant discussing. I like to use some of the blends from New England wetland plants. In upland sites, I do like to use a blend of, there's a native erosion control mix for dry sites, and I like to blend that with the conservation wildlife mix, which I think the prior applicant was talking about. I think that the dry restoration seed mix has good native grasses that come in quickly that provide uniform stabilizing ground cover with root structure. Then the conservation wildlife mix adds species diversity and additional forbs and herbaceous species that provides diversity. Similarly, around the edge of wetlands, I like to use a blend of the restoration mix for moist sites, which is native species specific to moist growing conditions. And that, again, provides the rapid growing, stabilizing seed cover. And then a blend of New England wetland seed mix, which is a widely popular blend of native species that is great for use in wetlands. But it tends to be slow in germination. I've applied that mix. If you'd use it in and of itself, it takes about 2 years before those species germinate and begin to come in. So blended together, it's a good mix. And of course, we anticipate that there's going to be conditions, strict conditions on this in perpetuity with any order of conditions that prohibits any additional work in these areas, with the exception of, we would ask for permission to continue removal of invasive species that are in these areas, and enhancement of native plantings as they see fit. But there would be prohibitions on, as Brian implied, this wouldn't be mowed and manicured as turf lawn. This would be in grassy areas. I would probably make a recommendation for once annual mow at either the end of the growing season or early before the start of the next growing season, to maintain it as a grass native meadow almost habitat, but letting it fulfill its annual entire foliar life cycle of growth, and it wouldn't look like manicured turf lawn. This would all be wild and naturalized, and we'd have a maintenance plan for it.
Mm-hmm. And I guess one kind of in conclusion, or opening it up to commentary after this, one thing that I think would be a really good opportunity for the commission is to have an educational component to this public passive recreation piece. We're creating 2 nature overlooks. We could develop placards and informational cards kind of identifying the different vegetation that's out there, or the different critters that we're seeing. I mean, the one that we're looking at on the screen right now is overlooking one of the gravel ponds that's wet year round. So there is opportunity here, not just for the passive rec piece, but also for some public education, and I think that could be something that's really neat. Yes.
Would you have the education coming from the company that owns the buildings as well? They can or cannot do. The tenants, having grown up.
Oh.
I grew up in the Bronx, New York.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it's one thing.
Is it part of the welcome packets?
Right.
Yes.
It's one thing for us to know, when it's allowed, but it's another for the person who's renting the property.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
we have to be privy to see what you would be, what they would be instructed, as they cannot do.
Absolutely, that's a fair request.
Yep.
Yep, whether it be
I want
by,
to see that before it went to tenants.
okay, yep. Oh, absolutely. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep. This is the opening hearing tonight. We understood that this wasn't gonna close, and these are great, yep.
Because I ran away from that.
Oh, did you? Yeah, yeah. I grew up in Cambridge. I was a bit of a city kid myself, and yeah, well, that's concrete jungle. Yep, absolutely. Any of this is subject to discussion and review with the conservation. This is sort of the feedback that we're hoping to garner from you guys moving towards another hearing. Absolutely. We could have educational signage out here. We could also come up with an operations and maintenance plan that would be in the homeowners association operations and maintenance for these areas, and also.
Or actually, and actually though, but inside the buildings is maybe, there's one thing to have operational and maintenance plans, but I think also maybe something, kind of a wall sign or just a diagram or whatever in the buildings themselves, so that the residents have easy access to something where, the what you do, the what you don't do, and stuff like that. So there's,
You call it a partnership, I mean, it doesn't all have to be.
Oh, absolutely.
yeah,
Yep.
but yeah, that makes, so they're not looking for a website, they're not looking for a piece of paper that they were given. There's places in the building where that information is posted.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Noel?
I have a question about snow removal. Is there a plan for that?
Yeah, so was asked at the planning board as well. So we are developing that right now. We can certainly provide that to the commission. We've identified 3 specific areas of primary snow storage. Those are significant square footage that are outside of conservation jurisdiction. And we're coordinating that with our landscape plan to make sure that it's not gonna adversely affect the plantings and whatnot. So we have 3 that are primary, that's where we pile all the snow. And I can point to them. One's gonna be right in this area here. I believe there's one up here. And then there's gonna be one that's kinda in the center green here. And then we've also identified a number of smaller landscape islands for kind of those smaller snow events, which the maintenance company can just plow to, and then once cleanup actually happens a couple of days later, they can move the snow into these primary locations. But I think the critical component is it's gonna be outside of the 100-foot buffer is what we've identified.
And similar, so you're talking about the vegetation, et cetera, right?
Yep.
Would there be pesticides or insecticides or any kind
No,
of?
well, in the treatment of, there are some invasive species out there. And normally, what I do in these applications is that we do intend on treating and removing invasive species out there. However, if there were to be any proposed use of perhaps herbicides in mitigation such as this, would have to be done by a licensed herbicide applicator. We would, normally what I do is I'll specify what species are out there and what needs to be treated. And a lot of times I'll even ask the commission that you could put a milestone deliverable in to the order of conditions saying that any use of herbicides needs to be proposed by a licensed herbicide applicator with talking about the dilution of what herbicide it is they're planning, what the application method is, what the frequency of duration, if you need any material safety data sheets. But I also put right into the plan that there's no broad-scale foliar application. Any applications that they do need to use have to be direct, species-specific, target-specific to prevent collateral damage of harm to any other species. So this would either be, in like Japanese knotweed, it would be direct stem injection method where they would cut the stems. They have a hollow, they're almost like a bamboo species, and they would just, they squirt a small dilution of herbicide directly into the spin, which goes into their root system, as opposed to a foliar application or anything that would have collateral, non-target specific harm. No use of pesticides, that can be prohibited in the conditions. I can't think of anything else. Herbicide only limited to the necessity of maintenance and removal of invasive species.
Do you have bittersweet and autumn olive on this site?
There is, yep, there's some water out there, there's,
Because both of those are very much rhizome based, so how,
right.
you know, I mean, my approach has always been,
Well-
you've got to take it out and get the roots out, because
No,
basically,
you're absolutely right.
it's a losing battle if you're just trying to do it with herbicides,
Right.
because the amount of herbicide you use to kill the entire root network is
Yep.
a heavy load.
So on our property, there's the wetland ponds is where it's mostly moonscaped right up to the edge, so there's really not a lot of invasive species for us to get. There are some invasive species sort of interspersed in the riprap embankments, which we can try to work those out and come up with a species plan. But where, on the northern side, which is that intermittent stream that was, I think it was created, but it's jurisdictional in between our property and the development on the opposite side. That's where there is more invasive species. At that point where we're working in the 50-foot and the 75-foot, there is an earthen berm that is sort of at the edge of the gravel pit where they got to their property bound, which is full of, I don't want to say garbage, but it's not garbage, but it's all sort of mixed aggregate material of stuff that they've pushed over to one side. And there is some vegetation on there, and the vegetation that is there is really ruderal, non-native, either invasive species or noxious weeds and non-desirable species. So in that area, we do have the ability to actually clear that vegetation out of there, and we could remove some of the soil, because as you implied, some of the issues with these rhizomatous growth with via root structure, it's prolific in Phragmites and some of these other species that you mentioned, as well as seed stock. So we would be able to grade down and remove some of the soil structure and then apply clean, organic, rich screen loam to it, and then apply the native seed mix blends and have a native planting schedule to go on top of it.
No?
Yeah.
One other question. So there's going to be a lot of heavy equipment here, right?
There is right now.
Yeah.
But yes.
Could it be stored outside the boundary? Are we concerned sometimes about,
Oh,
Yeah,
like
we
reasons
wouldn't
for-
have an
Yep.
issue with that as a condition, because there's enough land area here outside of buffer that we could store those overnight, certainly.
Another anticipation, and I assume this is over an acre of land, and this will be subject to a
is.
NIPD's general permit.
Sure.
So for over an acre of land, any of these properties will have a stormwater pollution prevention plan. It will be subject to coverage under the NIPD's construction general permit, which has provisions for monitoring and things of concern that would be erosion and sediment controls, stockpiling of material, but parking of vehicles where you might have fuel leaks or things of that nature, and finding designated areas to keep them away from naturalized resource areas like wetlands.
and the swimming pool, is that in the buffer zone?
So yes, if you look on the, we have two recreation areas, or two amenity houses, if you will. This first pool house, it is not within buffer zone, but if you look at the secondary, this is the 100-foot buffer right here. And then the edge of the patio comes up to the 75.
So that rectangle there is the
This
pool?
rectangle is the pool. You can see the little pool chairs right there. But yeah, so this portion right in here, so we got the edge of the amenity space here. This is the 75-foot buffer, this is the 100-foot buffer, so we are nicking it a little bit.
Well, the concern is about chemicals.
Discharge.
Chemicals and stuff, where you store them has to be outside the buffer.
Yeah, I don't think that would be an issue.
Okay.
And discharge too, I mean,
Discharge.
that's some kind of design pattern, whatever you guys do, right?
Yeah, it would be depending on the type of pool that goes in there, but certainly that could be a condition, that they don't discharge. I mean, we could discharge into our stormwater system, which would adequately treat it.
So with this, where the hatching is the X's, that's the area to be maintained annually or mowed manually? Mowed annually?
So this is the restoration mix, this is the naturalized mix. Dave, would we be mowing this annually or letting that go, and then this would be mowed annually?
It really is, I think,
Well, where I'm
I-
going with my
right.
question is when the erosion controls come out,
right,
if the X areas are going to be mowed annually,
Yep.
what provides the guidance for the maintenance crew to know where they stop mowing?
Got it.
oh,
So,
at the edge of, okay, yep, understood.
Yeah, because the
Yep.
erosion control is great during construction. When it goes away,
No, you're right.
that, yeah.
so let us put a little bit of thought into that.
It's a good question.
Posts or
Yeah, it just,
And
well, it
that's
just,
what, and that's exactly what I'm thinking.
Monuments,
yeah, it just, but it's the question and I figured you'd
yep, no, it's good
come back
forward
with an
thinking,
answer.
yep.
And those actually might be a nice opportunity for a little informational placard as well, if they're
Right.
by some unique vegetation.
I jump at those opportunities. I mean, I talk about restoration ecology because it's one of the most, to me, the thing I'm most passionate about. I didn't get my degrees in ecology to watch trees get knocked down, which is nice about a site like this because there are no trees to knock down. It's already flat earth. However, you know, I take pride in this. And any opportunity to educate the public, whether or not it be either before or after photographs that could be in a placard that demonstrates this was in fact a gravel pit, and here, through tireless efforts, we've tried to make it this way. Please be kind to it. Things of that nature, yeah.
The,
Okay, no.
the
no-
path, the 8.8 miles path around the whole property,
Yep.
is that gonna be paved?
No, so the only section that we're proposing to pave is that from Powers Road to Bell West. So the
Okay.
connection from the road to the adjacent properties, the balance of it will be
Yes.
stabilized gravel.
Here.
And then the
Oh, you got
small,
it. Yep.
the small features like the nature overlook, we're anticipating that to be maybe a pervious paver, just to have something hard and stable, for those areas.
So how will you maintain that in winter?
Well,
That path? It's gonna be
The-
year round.
The path all the way around will not be maintained year-round.
Okay.
The section from Powers Road up to Bell Westford will be maintained, and that's why we're proposing porous pavement there.
So would that potentially mean that in icy conditions, et cetera, somebody might be putting down sand or de-icing stuff on the pavement?
On the section
On
from
the-
Powers to up, so porous
Yeah.
porous pavement doesn't really ice up in that fashion because,
Okay.
water doesn't stay on the surface, it goes right through it. So it wouldn't be icing, so you could sand it, it's not super effective because
Okay,
it's,
But-
it's
so if-
open graded.
if we wanted to say no to that kind of treatment, which is stuff that might, in a rainstorm, be washed off.
Yep.
In the buffer zone, there wouldn't be an issue if we said not that kind of maintenance.
Nope.
Yep.
Not at all.
Let's see.
Do you have someone mowing that? That if there's a foot or two of snow, how would they, like, plow it?
Or would you let the snow melt?
On the, we're still talking about that one path.
Yeah, that,
So it would probably be like a little bobcat. I mean, there's gonna be a
Little
small
skid
piece
steer.
of equipment that's gonna be manipulating the snow piles to those storage areas I talked about, so they would just buzz through that section.
And the surface would be sturdy enough that the weight of that equipment would
Correct.
not damage it?
Yep.
Okay. Matt, can you, so when I was looking at the natural
the-
overlook there, right by that gravel pond, that looks like it's about 10 feet off the top of bank. Normally, we don't let people put any surface, if somebody was was putting a residence near a pond, we wouldn't let them build a little patio area that goes to the resource area. I like the idea of natural overlooks, but, our practice is we don't let people build an area
Yeah.
that they could kind of sit there that close.
Okay?
And
And I'm assuming the commission would like to go on a sidewalk out here?
Yeah.
Is that fair? So what we can do is we can certainly make that a topic of discussion as we walk around the specific area. To one, just look at the existing conditions and how it would be cited, should it be allowed in this location. And two, identify alternative locations for it. Something that we can still kind of get that view of the natural resource but further away, essentially.
Right. And one of the other points on the overlooks is, and we understand that as the Conservation Commission has standards, and how do you face the single-family homeowner who you just said no to and said, why did you let the development happen where we tend to prohibit those things? Again, I think in the context of just how degraded it is and how much work we're doing to do this, but with a site that will have usage of people in 350 units, I think one of the benefits of having public use, sorry, not to mention all the new people that'll be there. These overlooks give people a designated spot to go and look, and not, I think if you don't have those amenities available, that's when you tend to see illicit paths, where somebody cuts a path at the easiest point, or.
I think we'd probably allow it, but we just would want it for a little further back.
Yeah, but
We
just,
have our minimum
Yeah,
setback,
yeah.
as long as he's, further
30
away than our,
yeah, if it's 30 feet away, that's fine. The concern is somebody's out there with drinking a beverage cup,
Sure.
and it falls in, do they bother to go get? I spend enough time walking along
Yeah.
Depot Street, picking up litter that's been thrown out of cars. I really, it's nice to keep a separation from the resource area to people who
Yep.
are close and having a view of it.
Right.
Or fishing, people
That's
doing
fair.
fishing there.
Oh, yeah, would you
Oh,
allow
sure.
fishing?
No, I don't even know,
I don't know if there's fish.
I don't know if there's fish in the gravel pit much, there may or may not be. Right, sorry.
No, but,
Doesn't stop people fishing.
yeah, but the thing, yeah, I mean,
We can put, that's something either in a finding or a special condition that, in the event the the property owner wants to pursue, come back to the commission, we'll have,
we'll talk
let's,
about it.
let's renaturalize it first, and
Okay.
then we can, again,
yeah, I don't
have,
think we're looking for that type of active or passive use,
Right.
No, but if,
Yeah, it's a good question, because there's so many people out there, and I think that one of the things that we hope to develop with the commission in cohesion is what will be prohibitions in the order of condition that we can also tailor an operations and maintenance plan and rules and regulations for these areas to meet the order of conditions, such that we can either have signage out here that says no fishing, no drinking, the common sense things, but people break these rules. And also just the operations and maintenance plans for the development site that might have, trash barrels and regular maintenance of those trash barrels to prevent, or
yeah,
hopefully
especially when you
apply
get the walkway coming from
People
Belmont.
dog
their
vent
dogs.
stations,
Bring their dogs.
dog
there.
vent stations.
Oh, yeah.
and
So
stuff.
there is a dog park.
dog waste.
There is a dog park proposed with dog waste stations. Again, I believe it's outside the buffer. It's located,
But it's just, even if
Forgot
somebody's got a dog and it
it's up here.
is high energy, so they're going to take it to walk around, is yes, places where they can pick up a
Yeah,
bag to pick up the waste after the dog and some place to leave it.
Yep.
Those can be very beneficial.
I recently worked on a very similar project. It was a multifamily development project in Marlboro that had the same amenity. It was two phases of development. They had a pond in between the two developments. And we worked with them to come up with a passive recreational walking trail that had all sorts of rules and regulations to prevent misuse or abuse of this. That was in the operations and maintenance plan, maybe in the order of conditions of perpetuity, sort of rules and regulations that coincide with that. So,
Any
great.
more questions?
Yeah.
Not for now.
The only other one I can think of is if this is passive, the walkway, and open up to all residents, you're saying, it's a feature. So when people want to come who don't live here, are they just assuming they can park wherever they want in space? Or have you set aside kind of an area that's for people outside of this to come and park if they want to walk this course?
Yep.
That's
a good
being made
question.
available?
Well, what we've done is we've earmarked this one bank of spaces right here, which is directly adjacent to kind of the main entrance, the Powers Road, that multi-use path right here. These are going to be designated visitor or guest public parking spaces.
Will there be bike racks someplace?
There's going to be bike racks everywhere. It's part of,
What
it's
about-
part of the overlay.
So what about bike usage on these paths?
So they're open to bike usage.
Okay,
Yeah.
which is why they're 8 feet wide?
The
Well-
one from Powers, Bell, yeah,
Okay.
that's why.
Yeah, because it just, you know,
We're envisioning bikes,
okay, so bikes and pedestrians will have to coexist.
they will.
Matt, did you have any?
No, I think everything was addressed. My only comment was, you mentioned water connection to the Bell Westford to the
Correct.
north. Is that shown on the plan, or as that gets further developed, can that be?
Yep, so it is shown on the plan, it's just tough to see, it's on the index sheet. I can kinda, if you zoom out a little bit, I'll show you. It comes in the main entrance, which is right here,
Mhm.
comes down the main corridor, comes up.
Oh,
the
that's the
W.
water, oh, okay, I thought that was the line of.
Yeah, and then that's where the existing hydrant is for the drive aisle on Bell West. We're gonna end up connecting somewhere right in here. I don't know exactly where.
Okay.
The applicant has had discussions with the owners of Bell Westford, and they're supportive of that. The water department's obviously very supportive of that because it's a big
Yeah, I just missed it on the,
Connection.
all the dotted lines, thought it was just a plan sheet. So that's, if it's shown, actually, I think it may just be along the, yeah, it's that.
W
it
line.
just
And
happens
the
to
thin,
coincide with
and the
the
thin,
Oh, the thin line.
and the thin W line, yeah. So, yeah, again, just if it's there, and again, I'm sure, I don't know if it's addressed in a construction detail, again, kind of crossing the T dot, yeah, you know, having kind of that included, just where, as it does connect through,
Correct, yeah.
or connects to, you know, the existing.
Yeah, so this section right here, there's a culvert
Mhm.
in that intermittent stream, and we're trying to kind of coincide everything with that existing connection.
It's public water, right?
It is public water, yeah. So right now, Bell Westford's a dead end, it's just a loop to themselves off of 110, and then Powers Road is just, and what we're proposing is to, you know, connect everything together.
Any comments or questions from members of the audience? If you'd like to come up and tell us who you are and what your question is, or your comment.
And I'm just telling you, I've never done this before, and I'm an engineer, so I'm just,
Okay.
and I know it's late. So I'm Barb Cornelia, I live in Vinebrook Estates, which is right near, off of Powers Road here. And so I'm just learning more about this, and so you kept mentioning the Bell Apartments, there's 420 apartments in that complex, and now there's gonna be 530 in yours. That's quite a lot of apartments in a very small area, right? And so the water is an issue in that we are on town water in our neighborhood. So is this water supply cutting into the town water gonna affect all the houses and the neighborhoods and the.
Like water pressure or?
Water pressure, yeah, for sure. Like, will it affect our water pressure? Do we?
Does the
assume-
water department currently have capacity to accommodate this development?
Yep, through the chair, we have begun, we've had those conversations with the water department. The water department has identified a study that must happen. Ty and Bond is the independent water consultant for the department. We funded that study and it's currently underway. They do not anticipate water supply issues, but they're modeling everything.
Okay, and as far as like chemicals and everything, like a lot of the concerns you have brought up are also concerns of people in the neighborhood with the pool and pesticides and things like that running off. And then we have Kennedy Pond right nearby, which is, you know, is a very nice conservation area, a very nice pond, you know, a lot of vegetation, animal life, things like that. So we do have concerns as far as that kind of goes. And there is only one entrance, correct, on Powers Road in and out?
Two?
So
They're
where-
required
Two, I think.
Where's the other entrance gonna
Both on
So the
Powers.
first
Yeah, it's
one's
just-
right there, and then just to the south of it
be? Okay,
is
so they're
down.
both gonna be at Powers Road,
Correct.
okay.
And the the proposed is kind of in the location of the current.
Generally speaking.
Generally speaking, yeah.
And
There's no exit to Bell, right?
There's emergency access, if you will, because the berm ends on either side of that little culverted crossing of the intermittent stream. but we're not proposing anything beyond pedestrian.
But fire trucks would come
So-
down, right?
Fire trucks cannot, I mean, maybe, but we're not proposing anything
So
formal there.
it's not a completed route with a gate across it, it's
No.
just the two dead ends and a butt.
It's not even a dead end that
Okay.
abuts, because we have parking that
Okay.
basically crosses that whole section. So pedestrians and bicycles, yes, vehicles, no.
Okay, so there would be, you couldn't get from the Powers Road entrance and come out Bell West?
No.
Okay.
And so if there's an emergency, any emergency vehicles, they only have those two entrances for 530 apartments? Is that right? Okay.
In my opinion, that's a better question suited for the planning board and their site plan review and the
Yeah,
public hearing process with that. Not really, I don't, in my opinion.
Into our.
Yeah,
As long as it's
not
not
within
in the
the
buffer, we have no jurisdiction.
Right, you know.
And for the walking path, like, is the public there's gonna be space for the public to come in as well and walk on that path? Is that what you were saying? Okay.
That's what they were saying. They were saying the parking's
Yeah,
right there
Yeah.
for, the public, and they can walk it.
Yep.
So there'll be more traffic as well, right? So that's, I guess the other question is they're anticipating about 2,400 more cars from this a day. So that's a lot of air pollution, water pollution, other things. And so as far as like 5 stories up, is there gonna be a lot of lighting and everything is in the area and?
That gets
Yeah.
more.
All planning board.
That's all planning board stuff.
Well,
okay.
that's good to ask the planning board because they're the ones who might have jurisdiction in terms of conditions or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are good questions for them.
And I get, I just, as, because you guys all have the expertise, like with the environment concerns and everything, so really appreciate you taking your eagle eye to the whole plan and making sure that it fits, the environment and keeps it a nice, a nice place to live in a nice area, so appreciate that. So, that's all I have to say, I don't have much more.
Thank you.
Thank you, though.
Sure. One follow-up, what's the timing like for this whole project?
So, I mean, we're in permitting right now. There's a, right, obviously here with you, as well as the planning board, but also with DEP, with MassDOT, there's highway access that's out here. We just talked about the water study. There's a number of pieces that are coming into play that we're trying to work through right now. We anticipate entitlements, should everything go well, done by the end of the year, construct next year, begin construction next year.
And how long will the construction take?
Yeah, 2-3 years, I would say.
We phase it in, have some buildings live and operational?
Exactly. So the way I would envision this, we haven't done any phasing plans necessarily, but I would imagine the first clubhouse, so the one right at the entrance, those first 2 buildings, 1 and 2. And then you would migrate to 3, and then you would complete with 4 and 5, and the additional clubhouse concurrent with those. So it would be the first kind of 3 buildings as you come in, and then work your way counterclockwise around the site.
So the, that walking perimeter would probably be,
We would want it in place before the first residents move in, so I think that would be,
that's not gonna create an issue with construction vehicles as you're doing buildings 3, 4, and 5? Is if you've got people walking around and you've got,
the entirety of the loop. So I would say, you know what, why don't I
Yeah.
come up with a plan? And
Okay,
then we
yeah,
can-
because it's
we can
just-
speak a little bit more eloquently
yeah,
on
because
that.
it's, is because I think, you're right, building 1 and 2, it's nice to have a path nearest those buildings, but going beyond it and you've got,
May not make sense right away for the
Yeah.
first.
So where's the leaching field to the privately owned wastewater treatment plant?
Which one? So there's a number of different fields that are being proposed right now.
Where's the plant, first of all?
So if you could shift to is this the index sheet?
Yes.
Zoom out a little bit so we can get an overall view. So right now, this is gonna be the pump house. We have a tank field that's in this area. This is where all your primary treatment's gonna be. And then up in the central corridor, kind of coming down this way, there will be leach fields under the drive. So if
Sorry.
we could scan, yeah, we could scan up. So they start right about here. They're right in this area, and then they're across the common in the green space here.
So some more easily accessed than others. It's fun. That's all I have. So when are they gonna do a site visit?
Yeah, so,
When would you like to?
well, would it make sense for us to do it with the planning board?
I don't
We
know.
haven't discussed.
Like a
having
joint
going
board
on.
site visit?
Or would we rather just have our own so we can wander where we want to see and,
I would suggest.
Well, we might be
given the size of the
interested in
site.
two different things, so we might
Yeah.
wanna do it independently.
Yes, given how large the site is. Okay.
Yep. And we just need to have it coordinated, just given the health and safety factors so that we can notify them of the time and date that we'll be there.
Exactly.
And escort you around.
Um,
You know, sometimes we've had other sites where it's like, oh, I'll get out there when I can swing by or take a look.
If, I don't know if you wanna float a couple of dates, or we can
I can
coordinate through Matt.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
usually works.
We're through Matt,
Yeah,
Matt knows
Matt- Matt
what we can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And plus, we're getting more to the evenings where, you know,
There's
Daylight's
actually-
with us.
It's actually late.
daylight's our friend.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
getting better.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, and I think that on the ground and with plans in hand, I think it will speak volumes
Mhm.
to get out there.
When are you continued with the planning board too?
May 5th.
Makes sense to go after.
So,
I would like to continue to have a number of discussions here with the commission, even if we are continued with the planning boards. I know this was our introductory night. If we could continue for 2 weeks,
Yep.
we can schedule the site walk. If that works out, that we can do it within that 2 weeks before the next hearing. We can discuss what we saw and then just keep kind of moving towards the goal.
can I have a motion to continue to
So-
April? Oh,
So if you want to meet in 2 weeks again, right?
Mhm.
With some answers to our questions?
I have a few questions here that certainly I can answer, and then I think the goal will be to conduct a site walk between now and in 2 weeks.
Okay.
so that we could also review the
Exactly.
Site
Site
visit.
visit, yeah.
So can I have a motion to continue the public hearing till April 23rd?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everyone.
okay, moving on to our
35.
7:35. It's a,
That must be me.
yes, request for certificate of compliance for 103 Forest Road. I am sorry to keep you waiting, so I thought you were here to
2
listen.
hours
Yeah,
late.
you know what? I learned a lot, and I was very impressed, very impressed. I'm selling my home in Westford after being here for 27 years, and knowing that I've been a beneficiary of everybody's hard work here and throughout the town, and I know my new owners are going to continue to benefit from this, so, and it was, I don't know, just learning, it's nice. I don't have a fancy,
Name for the record.
Nancy Graziani, 103 Forest Road.
And so, I can certainly kind of direct this. An order of conditions was issued in 2002 for the construction of an addition and garage at the subject property. In reviewing the project file, my predecessor, Bill Turner, appeared to have gone out and delineated the wetlands and kind of assisted in the development of the site plan with site sketch, with which was the commission reviewed. In looking at the assessor's card sketch, the proposed addition and garage are consistent with the 32 by 26 garage addition and entryway is consistent with the what was on the site sketch. in reviewing kind of the site, there is an additional wood deck that has, appeared over the years. And I'm working with, the property owner to kind of seek after the fact approval. That will be coming back at a later date. Again, the scope of the project, the scope of the order of conditions was construction of a garage and the addition to the previously existing house. It's
You're
and-
looking for the most,
and would recommend that
certificate of compliance.
issue the certificate of compliance as the work was done in substantial conformance with.
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Is that it?
I'll be in touch.
That's it?
That's it.
That's it.
For the garage.
Oh, no, I was ready to get out some pictures, not that I have any, but I felt like, oh,
We gotta talk
man.
about the deck next.
Yeah.
Oh, I do want to tell you something about my little vernal pool, though, after talking about this and hearing you guys discussing educational information at these new places. As a science teacher,
Spring
I-
keepers already?
oh, I can't open my windows
Oh,
in
I'm
the
sure.
evenings. It's so loud. It's so loud. But I would go down for my students and I would get buckets of water and bring them to Lowell and deliver them to the different science teachers so we could all look at the life and times of Westford vernal pools. And the kids loved it. Loved it. The microscopes, like, look at this, I got this. It was amazing. So, last year was the last year I was able to do that because I'm tired.
So you're off to a new place.
Yes, which I don't know of. That's the first thing everybody asks me. So where are you going?
Yeah, really.
Don't know.
Well, you wait-
Anywhere but Westford, no.
I don't know.
Wait 2 years, there's 530 apartments coming up.
That is a lot.
Jeez.
And I'm sure the planning board with the traffic is gonna be, that's gonna be something.
Cornerstone squared.
It's gonna be
What did
crazy.
you say?
It'd be like Cornerstone squared. I don't like driving into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bell is not too bad, I go there.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's gonna happen? They'll look for like compact parking or, they'll, the size of and everybody will be in there where they're Ford 350 or whatever, taking up 3 spaces. It's just, people don't drive subcompacts and compacts in town when you take a look. They drive big vehicles.
I think it would really depend on the size of the units. If they're gonna be 3 bedrooms, you're gonna talk, then it's gonna be 2 cars at least per unit. But if it's 2 bedrooms or 1 or 2 bedrooms and they're smaller, that might help a little bit, keeping the number of cars down and the number of people down, but.
And also if a lot of the units are for singles, smaller for a single or a couple, then that may be where somebody gets into a smaller vehicle,
Yeah,
like their Prius.
And thankfully, the planning board has a,
the planning board has that one.
has a consultant,
That's not
to
one of
review
ours.
all that too.
Yeah.
If you're a young family, you can't move into Westford. It's tough. So unless you have a place like this where you can get your foot in the door.
Well, they're rentals anyway. It's not ownership.
Right, it's
just a
rentals.
rental.
But you're not having to do home repairs and shovel the driveway and there's not so much fun stuff about having a house.
Hence the reason I'm.
I'll
Yeah.
be 57 years though, so.
Wow, yeah, you've had a number of generations come through, yeah. But my daughters are all graduated and
So did mine.
doing their thing, so,
Well, thank you.
thank you.
I'll be in touch.
And, yes, and I need to know how to fill
Yeah,
out.
I'll be in touch.
Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
Good night.
Okay, moving on to our other agenda item, discuss and possible action to designate a Conservation Commission representative to the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee.
I'm drafting a chart after discussion with the consultant who's updating the open space and recreation plan, and discussions with the town manager. We decided it would be best to have a standing committee for to work on and kind of represent the interests of the a couple of various boards in town that are tied to the open space and recreation plan, and in the years where it's not being updated, be able to meet 2, 3, 4 times a year, just to kind of provide updates on the action plan for the action plan associated with the plan, so that, we can kind of, there's many hands kind of interested in kind of the implementation of the open space and recreation plan, as opposed to when my predecessor did it in 2018, and kind of developed the action plan, but there wasn't, a buy-in, or there wasn't a stakeholder representing, say, the interests of the Conservation Commission, components of that. And so that's kind of what I'm envisioning. As I said, I'm still drafting it, so this will probably get added to another agenda. And, there'll be a couple public forums requesting participation in, as we go through the summer and work towards the updating the plan. But the charge isn't done yet, and so this will be on upcoming commission agenda.
Okay.
I don't have really any updates for much of any of these. For the discussion action item related to 20 Keys Road, I don't have not sent the letter to the property owner. With respect to Stony Brook Conservation, the hiring of beach attendants, need to follow up with the recreation director and the year-end review with the summer camp operators, as we're certainly approaching the upcoming season. Have that done and then report back to the commission. I don't have any update on the repairs to the East Boston campus buildings with the donation from the Friends of EBC.
Are we at the point where we're still searching for a second person to
I've
request?
identified, I just need to
Okay.
follow up and coordinate.
Okay, so we have somebody, we just need to ask for a quote.
And meet them up there, so that they can kind of
Show them what he's
evaluate
quoting
the current conditions.
Okay.
At Edwards Woods, I realized I didn't include the photos that I previously had taken. Freedom Park, the leash law sign was installed, and I will finish up kind of a request to the department, or to the parks foreman, kind of identifying the annual maintenance and for the overall park, to be kind of regular maintenance and kind of the timing thereof again, with the events of Memorial Day and I think Veterans Day, they may do another, kind of make sure that it's on their radar for, regular maintenance. And then, there is the existing vegetated buffer to the pond, where, we need to have that kind of much to the point of prior points of the representatives for 37 Powers, kind of have a annual mowing of kind of the buffer so that it stays at, a shrub level, and, some of the more established trees, aren't able to propagate, and, in addition to assist with the maintenance of any returning invasive species that are there.
Carol?
How are we sharing?
As we get a quote.
Mailing would be expensive. How can we do?
Well, it doesn't. We don't need to. I don't have it probably any mass communication to to the proximate residents would have to be mailing. Wouldn't have email. I'd have emails for a couple people, but not everything. Yeah, I don't know if the Forge Pond and Forge Village improvement
is there even still a citizen's
Right,
group?
I don't know if that's, you know, an active
Yeah, I mean,
I
citizen.
don't think you had to tell them what we've done, or,
I mean, we haven't
you know, just a
limited
thought.
what we've done.
Yeah, and,
so.
yeah, I mean,
flyer you can put through doors. I mean, you know, I'm just trying to think of how you do that.
well, and I think some of it is, a lot of this is future action, so it's more like, as we've got the plan coming together. No, the person who did your walkway, if you can get us that person's name and contact information, one of the things that we're looking to do is, see if we can submit a CPC grant, or a grant for CPA funds. Yeah, to basically renovate that walkway to the gazebo and add the section to the dock so that it becomes more accessible. You know, is as we start to have a plan for the things we can do, that's at the point where we've got a flyer that says this is coming attractions.
Yeah, you also could go back to asking for the amount. Do you know what we have left in there? That fund from CPC?
I mean, we don't have, we haven't asked for anything. Right, but that was for the acquisition of land.
Doesn't matter what it's for.
Yeah,
Dollars.
yeah, and so, you know,
Yeah, but
you and I should talk.
yeah, but actually, when Matt and I were talking about it, is the walkway, it's a conservation property, but it's really a recreation amenity.
and so, you know, have kind of combining the, you know, and so it certainly falls within a couple of the buckets of CPC, and but yeah,
There's nothing that says it has.
right, and
Yeah.
you know, but have it be, you know, kind of looking at using CPC as a funding source to, you know,
But
do
you
some.
have more than one group come together.
Oh, understood.
Okay,
Um,
just throwing out ideas.
Yeah, but yeah, yeah.
I do not have an update on the Summer Village CR amendment. Regarding Conservation Restriction 28 at Jarvis Hill Estates, met with Margaret and Ann this past Tuesday, years ago, on April 8th. We were able to walk the loop around the open space with a representative of the trustee. We did observe the bike jump. It's present, doesn't appear to be present along the trail. Doesn't appear to have any use recently. And the trustee mentioned that they'll, you know, certainly address it in the coming.
You talking the one I mentioned?
No. This is over on This is over on the south side of town. Regarding that, there's a, you know, as the weather warms up a little bit, and you know, if we have a dry weekend, you know, they anticipate going out and kind of filling in the holes and kind of dismantling the jumps. Additionally, reviewed the area kind of at the north end of the open space CR property that had where cutting of vegetation had occurred. In reviewing with everyone on the site visit, it didn't appear to me that there was any new activity. You know, the stumps that were cut, that appeared to have been cut, have started to weather. So there was no, you know, fresh chipping, chainsaw remnants, or, you know, it certainly, and so requested the trustee kind of keep an eye on it, you know, and, you know, kind of regularly go out so that, you know, in the event something is occurring, you know, we're addressing it certainly in a timely manner as to, you know, when it's occurring. Because again, they live in the neighborhood. It's certainly easier for them to, you know, go through the area than it is to, you know, get out myself, you know, and you know, swing in on a site visit. That's all, unless I forgot anything.
Well, you're going to do the research for the two bridges on the trail to find out.
Oh, yes, we did find two bridges that likely were scout projects. In one over kind of a brook, the other kind of in just kind of a low depression. I was gonna see if we have any records of when they got installed. It certainly seems to be scoutish.
They need to be repaired
They're in a very sad state.
Yeah.
So repairing, especially one of them is certainly in the one over kind of the depression. Not I didn't observe any wetland resources there. It certainly could use a little. Could use a.
There used to be scouts that lived in the neighborhood, I've learned.
Ah.
So, but anyway, yeah, so it just, there are a couple of bridges on the trail that require attention, and some of it is, if we can trace it back to who installed them, that becomes a starting point for repairs or replacement.
If it was a previous scout project, it's hey, here's
Here's
it
another
may
one.
not be an
Another one,
it may not be an Eagles to the degree of an Eagle project, but it may be a troop project and kind of general community service.
Minutes.
There's no other business? Can
You
I
have minutes, don't you?
Minutes, oh, yes. Thank you.
Looks good to me.
Look good to me. Any comments or questions? No. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes for March 26, 2025? All those in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
So can I have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor? Aye.